Bitcoin.
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 Bitcoins.
Well, Bitcoin.
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 I like some Bitcoin.
Bitcoin has recently pierced into the consciousness of the mainstream. We've heard everyone from the likes of Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, to Kanye West talk about it, so much so that the word today has become a part of our lexicon. And yet, despite making its recent splash in mainstream media, majority of the world still don't truly understand Bitcoin. And I don't blame them because it's a very complicated subject. It took myself a lot of reading, learning, and watching videos before I truly finally understood how powerful of an invention Bitcoin is. And when I did, it felt like I was Neo in the movie Matrix when he finally came to his own epiphany.
I know Kung Fu.
It was an out-of-body experience, just because I finally understood how revolutionary and transformational Bitcoin is going to truly be. In this video, I'm going to explain to you why I believe firmly that Bitcoin is going to reach $10 million one day. Yes, I know that most of you will think that this sounds crazy, but if you keep an open mind and watch until the end, I promise I will lay out all the facts for you and also show you how Bitcoin presents itself as one of the best risk-to-reward investment ever. So hang tight and enjoy. If you are relatively new to the space and find it really hard to gauge where Bitcoin's future lies, I totally get you because I was once there too. For the most part, even the mainstream media still does not fully grasp the transformational change that Bitcoin is going to usher in. You see, we are still very early into this Bitcoin and blockchain story. Just think of it this way, to fully understand Bitcoin, one must not know only concepts of economy, history, finance, politics, but they also have to be pretty tech savvy. So let's start with the history of money. The short and quick version of it is that for thousands of years we relied on precious metals such as gold and silver for trading. There's only so much gold we can dig up, so this in turn makes it very scarce and valuable, great for a medium of exchange. However, one of gold's big problem is that it's not very portable and convenient to lug around with you, and gold is not very divisible, so eventually we moved on to minting coins out of gold and silver. And then later on, with the help of printing technology, we moved on to paper money that was still backed by gold. And for half a century, Americans were able to trade in their paper money for gold at the bank. This was commonly referred to as the gold standard. Well, in 1971, President Nixon decided to take the dollar off the gold standard, therefore allowing the Federal Reserves to have full control over the money supply, essentially allowing them to print money out of thin air. And each time they do this, they dilute the current money supply, in other words, inflation of our money. Fast forward to today, all money is created and influenced by various governments and central banks around the world. This has become a huge problem, you see, because it only stands to enrich those who are in power, such as the governments and central banks. And we have countless examples of how devastating this monetary policy has been. We see countries such as Zimbabwe, Venezuela go through hyperinflation, where their money supply has been inflated at such a high rate that it requires them to take stacks of money just to buy everyday items. Here are some examples. This is how much it takes to buy a whole chicken. How about some beef? A roll of toilet paper? Or perhaps some carrots? The housing crisis. Real estate prices across the world are skyrocketing, as rich people are using them as investment vehicles instead of homes. Largely because their wealth can be protected from fiat inflation. As a result, not only does this drive house prices way beyond their fair valuation, it also makes the rich become richer and the poor become poorer, as now they are also left out of the housing market. Take a look at this website, hilariously entitled Crack Shack or Mansion. Based on how ridiculous the house prices have become in Vancouver, Canada, upwards of almost $2 million for what most would call a regular house in North America. This housing trend was largely responsible for the famous 2008 financial crash with the subprime mortgages. And what did the governments do then? They bailed out the big bankers who were largely responsible for the crash in the first place. And once again, the Feds printed out more money, diluted the money supply to help out their banker friends. The crash caused many people to lose their houses, massive layoffs from their jobs, and families torn apart. It's estimated that the average American household lost a third of its net worth during the recession from the 2008 financial crash, and has since contributed to the further rising inequality gap throughout the world. Fast forward to today, take a look at the real-time national debt counter. America is at a historic all-time high debt of $23 trillion. And the global debt is sitting at $247 trillion. And renowned economists around the world are once again predicting another crash that is going to happen within the next 2 to 5 year window. At this point, it goes without saying that the monetary policy that Nixon did by taking us off the gold standard is completely flawed, as the money supply is now controlled by governments and central banks, and is showing more and more cracks day by day. Here's where Bitcoin comes into the picture and why it matters. It rose from the ashes of the 2008 financial crisis by an anonymous person or a group of individuals by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto. Poetic in the way that it has surfaced, the Bitcoin white paper revealed to us a different way of governance. A new decentralized system has evolved from the concept of the peer-to-peer decentralized BitTorrent network to something that we now refer to as the blockchain. The Bitcoin blockchain is a growing list of records called blocks, which are chained together using mathematics, code, and cryptography. It is open source, transparent, maintains a global record of an open ledger for everyone to see. A Bitcoin is divisible to 8 decimal places, making it infinitely scalable. There will only be 21 million Bitcoins ever minted. Therefore, for the first time in human history, something that is truly scarce that can be used as a global currency and a store of value. The network is decentralized by people around the world who run a Bitcoin full node, and it can be colluded. Therefore, we also know its monetary policy ahead of time. The network is guarded by what we call miners. Like counterpart to the traditional gold miners, they too are run by different individuals or groups around the world. They are rewarded with Bitcoins by dedicating their computer power, which in turn protects the network from hackers. In fact, the network is so secure that its estimated combined computer power used to mine Bitcoin is equivalent to the top 500 supercomputers around the world. It is virtually impossible to hack and has a 10-year ongoing track record to prove it, which is a great achievement to say the least, as it stands to be the biggest online honeypot for hackers and thieves. So hopefully now you understand a little of what makes Bitcoin so important. It is quite a lot to take in at first, which is why I firmly believe that we are barely into the first inning of this revolution. At this point of Bitcoin's existence, it is mostly misunderstood and highly underrated. In my opinion, Bitcoin is at the stage where the internet was in the early 1990s. Remember the rudimentary sounds your modem would make every time you wanted to connect to the internet? Needless to say, the internet had a lot of hurdles back then. Just like how Bitcoin is today, a lot of people used to underestimate how much the internet would develop. Fast forward to today, roughly 30 years later, we have companies like Google, Amazon, Apple, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Uber, and all because of the internet. It surpassed all of our wildest expectations. We do our shopping online, book vacations, find out reviews for restaurants we want to go to, hotels, search for romantic partners. Basically, the internet is ubiquitous with our daily lives today. We are still in the early days for Bitcoin, as most people are still going to take time to learn and discover just how important this technology is going to be for humanity. This is why we hear so many misconceptions such as, Bitcoin is too slow, it can't scale enough to support a global economy. It uses too much energy. It's only used by criminals. It's the MySpace of cryptos. This is a process like the internet was in the heydays. It's going to take a little bit of time for the mainstream to figure out. However, because of how interconnected we are today and how much easier information flows through technology, social media, and just the internet in general, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies will mature much quicker than the internet did.
The differences between the internet and the World Wide Web. The differences between commercial online services such as the Microsoft Network, Prodigy, or America Online, and the internet. How to get connected to the web. how to use something called a web browser to navigate the web, what a web page is, and how to search, locate, and download all types of files, from information files to video and audio files.
What is internet
Allison?
anyway?
Internet is that
massive computer network.
The one that's becoming really big now.
What do you mean? That's big. How does one? What do you write to it like mail?
No, a lot of people use it and communicate. I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
A cryptocurrency is a let's see, how do I do this?
Because if you can't describe it,
I know,
we're
I'm
sunk.
trying to think about the
Bitcoin, but they question it because what is it based on?
It's sort of
One of the joys was kind of watching Anderson trying to wrap his mind around this thing.
There's no actual coin.
That is true. That is something that trips
I
people
know this
up.
is a dumb question, but
No,
I can't
no.
get past that.
It took me a little while too.
I'm so antiquated, I can't imagine things that do not have a physical component.
It's really abstract for a lot of
Don't
people.
patronize me.
Horse and buggy, in the early days of the earliest automobiles, people who were buying some of the early cars were being asked, why do you need the car? The horse and buggy work just fine. And those early cars were really slow. But people who wanted to have cars needed infrastructure like roads and services like gas stations in order for cars to truly take off. The same thing happened, and we know how that ended. And the same thing happened with the internet in 1995. You used to see this old school computer. Imagine, or 1994, 1995, imagine if on that day I would have told you, hey, fast forward, you're gonna have a small device in your pocket, you'll be able to download a 2-hour movie, watch it on demand, shop for groceries, interact for free with all of your friends and family, call them for free on Skype, find an apartment anywhere in the world, summon a ride on demand. You would have told me I was crazy, rightfully so, because you would have pointed out, my modem can't stay connected long enough to get out a single email. The same is true of crypto. We are in the dial-up days. And the critics out there confuse the current state of innovation with the end state of the innovation. And I think that's one of their biggest mistakes. Why would they assume the innovation would all stop right now? I mean, complaining about crypto today, one journalist said, and complaining about how slow and how it works today is like complaining in 1994 that the internet didn't have Netflix.
So let's talk about the big figures in media today that is staunchly against Bitcoin. Let's start with Warren Buffett. The world's third richest man has gone on countless media rants calling Bitcoin everything from rat poison squared to how it's only for charlatans.
About 5 years ago, we asked Charlie Munger, we were sitting right there, what he thought of Bitcoin, and he said, rat poison. Back then it was about $100+ per Bitcoin. Today it's 9,000. Is it still rat poison?
Well, probably rat poison squared.
Upon a quick Google search, we find out that Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, has over 40% of their portfolio in legacy financial banks. Not to mention, he's also overlooked Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Tesla in the past. Next on the list, Congressman Brad Sherman. He's attempted to call for a bill to ban all cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin. Considering how much Wall Street and Silicon Valley has invested into this industry, his attempt is naive at best.
I look for colleagues to join with me in introducing a bill to outlaw cryptocurrency purchases by Americans so that we nip this in the bud.
A further look into Mr. Sherman's background, we quickly find out that his largest campaign donors come from, you guessed it, big banks. Finally, the infamous CEO of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, who's had constantly gone out of his way to trash Bitcoin, calling it a fraud to a vehicle for criminals.
I could care less about Bitcoin. I don't know why I said anything about it. If you're a criminal, great product. I mean that.
One of the more obvious ones, Jamie Dimon is the CEO of the biggest of the big four banks and formerly a board of director of the Federal Reserve Bank. What we can learn from this is that these guys from the old financial world stand to have a lot to lose as Bitcoin continuously creeps into the mainstream, Remember, these guys are not dumb, they are masters of public relations. Asking these guys what they think about Bitcoin would be like asking a taxi driver his view on Uber, or Blockbuster's opinion on Netflix. Now let's flip the tables around and see what the smartest minds around the world are saying about Bitcoin.
You believe that Bitcoin is going to be the world's single currency, or you hope that it is going to be the world's single currency.
And I think we've seen massive value creation.
Blockchain got recognized because of Bitcoin. It was a fundamental technology for Bitcoin. What an incredible thing Bitcoin is. It's still here working after I don't know how many years it's been, and it hasn't need to be changed, and it's not owned or controlled by any company.
So just let me tell you where I'm at with money right now because of Bitcoin. I've been a gold bug, like I said, since '72, and the way I see the world today with Bitcoin is that there's three kinds of money. There's God's money, which is gold and silver, again, atomic number 79 and 47. Then there's government money called fiat money or currencies, which is the dollar, the euro, the yen, the peso. And the third type of money now is cyber money, which Bitcoin and Ethereum and those guys are the most famous. It's really about what's real. You know, is money fake or is it real? And I think, so the choice, when I talk to people, I said, what do you think will be here in 2040, approximately 22 years from now? Will gold still be here? Well, it's been here since eternity. Will the dollar be here?
Right.
I don't think so. And will blockchain be here? I think so. So that's really the way I look at the world of money and currencies, is what's going to be here in 22 years.
So back to the internet, I believe the internet will have a native currency.
Really?
It'll have a native currency, and I don't know if it's Bitcoin. I think it will, because just given all the tests it's been through and the principles behind it, how it was created, and you know, it was something that was born on the internet, that was developed on the internet, that was tested on the internet. It is of the internet.
Well, Bitcoin is exciting because it shows how cheap it can be. Bitcoin is better than currency in that you don't have to be physically in the same place, and of course for large transactions currency can get pretty inconvenient. The Bitcoin technology is key, and you could add to it or you could build a similar technology where there's enough attribution that people feel comfortable. This has nothing to do with terrorism or any type of money laundering.
What excites you right now? What can you look at in the world today that you feel like, wow, that is a good idea, or that is really where the growth story is?
I think there are these pockets in biotech that I find like that. You know, the one other one that I've been looking at a lot more have been the cryptocurrencies, and while I'm skeptical of most of them, I do think people are a little bit are maybe underestimating Bitcoin. It's like a reserved form of money. It's like gold, and it's just a store of value. You don't actually need to use it to make payments. And it's been, you know, there's about $70 billion worth of Bitcoin in the world. There's $9 trillion worth of gold, and if Bitcoin ends up being the cyber equivalent of gold, you know, it has a great potential that's very underestimated. That's very underestimated. That's very underestimated.
Well, people question it, and I know there's been so much debate about Bitcoin, but they question it because what is it based on? I mean, you see that the dollar is based on, you know, the trust of the Treasury, the trust of the U.S. government. What is Bitcoin based on?
Well, the argument it's based on the security of the map, which tells you that it can never be diluted by a government. It can't be hacked, and it's a form of money that's absolutely that's secure in an absolute way. It's hard to mine. It's actually harder to mine than gold, and so in that sense, it's more constrained.
Because there's a finite amount that are going to be made.
Yeah.
Right. There's 21.9 million Bitcoins that are going to be made, and if enough people hold and don't sell, and enough people borrow to buy, just like we saw in the stock market, because look. And so, yeah, so there's scarcity. So it's point being scarcity sells.
Yes, right.
And there's no greater defined scarcity than Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Do you own any of the? Okay.
Yes.
Right now, it is believed that the total money supply of all fiat currencies around the world is somewhere around $80 trillion. if you consider M1, M2, M3, if you add them all up around the world. And I strongly believe that that number is artificially diluted and artificially kept small, because essentially by continuously printing, governments are disincentivizing the world and disincentivizing investors and even average people to store too much money in currency.
And they're doing this because if I take $100 and I put it in my bank account, as they print money, that $100 loses purchasing power every single year.
For sure. I mean, every single day where the money creation occurs, see, it's interesting because the cost of creating that money for the government is near zero. All it takes is just a push of a button, right?
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, every single unit of fiat currency that gets created reduces the wealth of the fiat holder around the world. And Bitcoin is an unimaginably new phenomena where, for the first time, nobody can seize your wealth. Not just directly, like they did with gold in the 30s, but just like they do with stealth inflation in fiat. Nobody can print more. And for the first time, you have this currency that you can have full, or at least very strong confidence that for the rest of your life, the percentage of the money supply of this entire system will always remain the same, which really is completely unprecedented, because even with gold, you don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
This current system, because the money is constantly getting diluted, people like surgeons, artisans, dentists, etc., engineers, they either have to play part-time investors on the side, or they have to sort of outsource those services to registered investment advisors and brokers, etc. And that's part of the reason why the financial system is much bigger than it has to be, and why Wall Street is just a ginormous part of the world's economy. If we had something like gold, or better yet Bitcoin, then you could save your wealth and it would actually gain a little bit of purchasing power every year without having to sort of have this anxiety-riddled wave of activities that you need to do. And it's actually quite crazy how in today, I'm not even talking about the second or third world where this isn't even an option, even in the first developed civilized Western world, you have to create a diversified portfolio of equities, bonds, small caps, munis, commodities, FX, derivatives sometimes, etc., just to preserve your wealth. When all is said and done, Bitcoin will be the second or the third single biggest asset class, the single biggest asset in the world. Maybe real estate.
Here's the way I look at it. There is about $100 trillion worth of fiat currency out there.
Okay.
Okay. Fiat currency is poor currency. It's tied to political whims. It's tied to political parties. Bureaucrats control it. It's not really that good for you. And all of the new, best, brightest engineers are working on cryptocurrencies. Okay. And so my belief is that over some period of time, and I don't want to go into it in too great of depth, but over some period of time, the cryptocurrencies will eclipse the fiat currencies. So we're looking at about 1,000 times on what we've got now.
So let's talk about some of the catalysts that's really going to drive Bitcoin to the millions and eventually to the end game of $10 million per Bitcoin. First and foremost, the global debt right now is sitting at $247 trillion. This is obviously unsustainable, and as governments and central banks continually to enrich themselves and devalue the purchasing power for everyone else, people will start to learn about the monetary system, especially in today's age where information is widely available. Second, as more and more corrupt governments around the world start to steal wealth from their citizens through the printing of money, countries like Turkey, Argentina, Zimbabwe, and most recently and probably still in everyone's mind, Venezuela, we are starting to see their citizens adopt Bitcoin at an alarming rate, even if it means going against a ban that their countries have made against Bitcoin. Due to how widespread technology is now, people are using their smartphones to trade and even setting up computers to mine Bitcoin. Third, Wall Street and the big institutions. In the last 2 to 3 years, we have started to see some of the biggest, most powerful financial giants in America setting up on-ramps for the future of Bitcoin. Fidelity, one of the largest asset managers in the world with approximately $7 trillion in total customer assets, have announced that they are starting a crypto exchange and that they are actively already mining Bitcoin and Ethereum. TD Ameritrade, with an astonishing 11.5 million client accounts and assets over $1.3 trillion, have just launched a cryptocurrency trading platform. The Canadian Pension Plan Board, with over $328 billion in assets, are looking into Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. The Yale Endowment, David Swensen, perhaps one of the most revered and respected trend-setting investor in the world, has recently declared their first $400 million fund into Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. The New York Stock Exchange, the world's largest exchange with a market cap of $30 trillion, has announced that they will soon launch their backed Bitcoin cryptocurrency exchange. Keep in mind that these are some of the biggest financial players in the world who have only recently started to declare that they are building the on-ramp for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Fourth, the big businesses. They are starting to make their moves too. Facebook is launching their own cryptocurrency that is set to come out in 2020. Furthermore, Mark Zuckerberg has held talk with his longtime rivals, the Winklevoss twins. This is all in an effort to help push forth their new Facebook crypto. Could this be another repeat in history? Remember when longtime rivals Steve Jobs and Bill Gates finally put aside their differences and came together to help each other achieve mass adoption with Windows and Apple? Most people underestimate this move, but one just has to remember how Facebook is the world's social network and has a reach beyond most people's imagination, introducing their billions of users throughout their ecosystem of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Oculus is going to be absolutely huge. Samsung, the world's second biggest smartphone manufacturer, has released a Bitcoin and crypto wallet native to their flagship smartphone line. And in a few years, it is my strong belief that every phone will come equipped with a Bitcoin wallet. And then we have companies who are starting to accept Bitcoin as payment, especially beneficial for them as an alternative to the high fees that credit card companies like Visa and MasterCard shave off each transaction. For example, here are some of the big names. They include Microsoft, Starbucks, Whole Foods, KFC, Shopify, Wikipedia, and this list is going to expand year by year until every business will eventually start offering payments in Bitcoin and other cryptos to avoid the third-party rent seekers such as Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, who take a cut out of every transaction that's no longer required. Finally, perhaps the biggest catalyst of all is demographics. As the baby boomer generations are starting to get into their retirement stage and dropping out of the workforce, millennials are starting to rise up. Within the next 10 years or so, they are coming to the stage of their lives where they are building up their career and earning money, and saving up for a house, a vacation, their kids' college fund, or a retirement. This is the generation that grew up in the digital era, playing video games such as Super Mario, World of Warcraft, League of Legends, Fortnite, and what have you. And the idea of a digital currency like Bitcoin is second nature to them. In addition, millennials also happens to be the generation that witnessed the impact that the 2008 financial crisis had on their parents and the rest of the world, and are all too well familiar with the growing fiat hyperinflation that's happening around them. So naturally, they grew up with a healthy distrust of governments and banks. And this demographic is maturing to becoming the biggest generation with wealth. So put that into perspective.
I've been doing research, and I've worked at various firms. I started off at Kidder Peabody, then Solomon Brothers, then JP Morgan. Blockchain is a millennial story. And I'll explain why I think that if millennials adopt this the way we think they are, this is not the internet bubble. This is a lot more like emerging markets becoming an asset class. I think that's really the appropriate analog. This is very largely a millennial phenomenon. So we have to keep in mind that the generation that is going to drive this asset as an asset class isn't really us and the people in the audience. It's really going to be our kids or those who are millennials today. Well, what are millennials going to be doing in the next 30 years? Okay, something you can see a mile away. I have a population tree here, and I've lined up each of the generations. The millennials are now just entering two critical periods, the home buying years and their investing years. So let's think about housing. I've lined up each generation when they were aged 21 to 35, and I colored each. The red is silent, the boomers are light blue, Gen X is gray, and the millennials are blue, dark blue. Housing starts have peaked with every generation's peak cohort size. This tells us housing is going to likely boom through 2030. So stay long housing, I guess, right? It's really bullish. But let's talk about investment years. Savings flow, okay, so the investment pool of prime income age earners is running about $1 trillion a year today. Okay, so every year there's $1 trillion that the people aged 35 to 60 allocate. And today, it's dominated by boomers and Gen X. But the millennials are now just entering these prime income years. So what did the silent generation do when they dominated the prime savings flow? They actually bought gold. Gold was $40 when we went off the gold standard in 1971. That was the first time individuals could buy gold. And when the silent generation cohort peaked, gold was $600, a 15x in a decade, just by a single generation buying gold. The boomers, we know, bought equities. What was the first year the boomers turned age 35? 1982. That shaded blue area is their first boomers to the peak size of the cohort, 1982 to 99. Coincidence? That was essentially the stock market boom. And the question is, well, what about the Gen X, which was a smaller cohort? As you can see in the middle period, the stock market didn't go anywhere. Gen X wasn't big enough to actually power the stock market higher. But here we think the millennials are going to drive equities. They like growth stocks, so we think it's going to power a stock market boom through 2038. Gen X liked hedge funds, and you can see that's essentially peaked with Gen X. But here's what I think millennials are going to do. Now remember, millennials are going to soon have $1 trillion of savings flow. Bitcoin's rise in 2016 coincides with the first millennials entering their prime savings years. Today, crypto, for every $1 billion that goes into crypto, it's turning into roughly $25 billion of price appreciation. If millennials put 10% of their savings flow, $100 billion, into crypto, that's a $2.5 trillion rise per year. And crypto is roughly a $500 trillion market cap. So we think that you may end up seeing Bitcoin by the end of the cycle as high as $10 million per Bitcoin.
Some highly intelligent financial analysts, especially the younger generation, are estimating that Bitcoin has roughly 2,000% gain from today's price to its maturity. This is what makes the risk to reward ratio so great for Bitcoin, because it's not like you have to put in a lot of money to see a high gain in the future. You don't need to buy a whole Bitcoin, which is a common misconception. You can just invest a small amount, something that you're comfortable with, and just secure it and forget about it for a few years. For example, a $500 investment today could end up being $10,000 in a few years. That's with a 2,000% gain. One thing you have to remember is that because this is a new revolutionary asset class, it means we are still early in the adopter discovery phase. And therefore, volatility comes with the territory. As Bitcoin's market cap gets bigger and bigger, more people understand Bitcoin, there will be less speculation, and in turn the volatility will even out. So if you are invested right now, or you're planning to be investing soon, you have to have a strong fundamental understanding of how Bitcoin is going to change the world. Otherwise, you might just end up ultimately selling before catching up the ride to the biggest mass adoption phase of this technology.
If you believe the current system that we have is meeting the needs of the world's disenfranchised and unbanked, then you can probably go ahead and dismiss cryptocurrency. But if you believe that it would add value to the global economy to get cheap, fast, and easy access for 2 billion people in the world, then cryptocurrency is something that you ought to pay attention to.
And little by little, as I traveled around the world and I got to meet people, everybody had a story. And it usually started with something like, I have this problem, or we face this problem, or we had to endure this. I remember the first time I went to Argentina, I had a chance to meet an older gentleman, and he told me a story about the many monetary collapses he had to endure. And he showed me where he buried his silver after the government's money went bad. Then he told me about how the police showed up and stole his silver. So then he went to his backyard and showed me where he buried his other silver, because the first was a decoy cache. That's how clever these people get. But that's the reality that people live in Venezuela, reality they live in Zimbabwe. And after 2008, it made me think, how far are we in the United States away from that? We have $23 trillion in debt. Our leadership continues to get more and more incompetent. The global financial markets are not healthy. A few key facts to remember. Our movement continues to grow. It's easy to get a little hopeless and think that the best times are gone, but there's actually more people in cryptocurrency today in 2019 than there were at the peak of the market in 2017. More businesses being started today, more venture capital entering the space, more diverse capital entering the space, stronger business models. Recently, Samsung just announced that apparently crypto's coming to their phones. 3 to 5 years, that's going to be a standard for pretty much every smartphone, probably including the iPhone. And all these major consumer platforms, from Messenger to Windows itself, are prime candidates to integrate structure. So our movement is growing.
You'd see that kind of volatility, but I think it's going to level out once the futures contract picks up steam, once options are written on, and then there's other products like ETFs and whatnot. I think you're just going to start to see it like level out and look a little bit boring. But the interesting thing is like the opportunities now. When it's volatile, when it's small, when it's risky, that's your opportunity to make money. When there's a high risk, there's a high reward. When it gets boring and stable and kind of caps out at couple trillion dollar market cap, there's really not much more room to go.
So are they just too old to get it, is what you're saying?
Well, I think that your brain loses its plasticity at some point, and you get wedded to the frameworks that you have. So you enter this world and you're taught money is this thing that's green or it's this precious metal, and you start confusing what's familiar or what's what you use as what's real or the way things have to be. It's also a framework that's been embedded or burned into your brain for, let's say, like 65, 70 years, and in some of these cases and examples that you're talking about, 80 years. It's hard to like unlearn that or think about something new. And look, if you're those individuals, like the status quo is really good.
There's a generational shift that's happening in the way that investors think about gold. So the younger generation, I grew up, I was born after the gold standard, didn't grow up during a period of war where you had to be able to store your money via something like gold. Younger generation, money is digital. Anybody who has a phone can now access this new asset class. And so you have what is approximate $68 trillion of wealth, $68 trillion of wealth, $68 trillion of wealth being handed down from boomers to X's and Y's and millennials over the next 25 years. That's not going to stay in gold.
You have actual investors that you're advising. Would you ever put them in a Bitcoin ETF?
Well, it's interesting. When we talk to our younger clients, we have a core gold allocation in our portfolios, and they'll ask about that and say, well, what about crypto? And if you talk to primarily millennials and ask them which they prefer, Bitcoin or gold, it's a landslide. It's not even close. It's like 90%. It's like 90%. It's like 90% prefer Bitcoin.
And as you can see, the headline reads 20% of young Americans own Bitcoin, the report says.
No. When I made that stupid statement, which got all those things, I called it fraud, my daughter sent me an email saying, Dad, I own 2 Bitcoins.
Do you know who Satoshi Nakamoto is?
I know this one. So it was the anonymous person that made Bitcoin.
It's kind of like a futuristic item, you know what I mean? I think it's viable. I don't know. Like, I feel like people are gravitating more towards it.
Do
Do you know what a Bitcoin is?
Yeah, every time I get on the Cash App, they say I can do the Cash App with a Bitcoin. And my girlfriend, she's been trying to learn more about Bitcoin because she wants to invest and stuff.
Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and then there's Ethereum.
Litecoin. So is it kind of like the fear of change? People are just scared because it's new and like you can't touch it?
Yeah, it could potentially, you know, upset the traditional banking traditions and things like that because you don't actually need a bank
Got it, okay.
to use it or exchange it.
That's a bit scary but exciting.
Oh, cool.
What do you think is the future of Bitcoin?
The future is that fact that you don't have to work too hard for your money. You have access to your money in an account.
What do you know about Bitcoin?
Bitcoin, I know the digital currency. I know there's like a possible future that will be taking over like the currency we use today. I know a lot of countries are actually adopting it. But I've invested a small amount and I'm going to leave it in there for like years to come.
Yeah.
Who knows?
What do you think is the future of Bitcoin?
There's not going to be any more cash. It's going to be all about Bitcoin.
You think Bitcoin's going to take over?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. Thank you.
I think it's on the way. It's on the come up. I mean, it's kind of low key right now. Not a bunch of people know about it, but I think it's on the way up to be one of the bigger apps of the world. Like it's on the way up.
This college?
No, I'm a senior in high school.
They're talking about Bitcoin in high school, and is this right?
Yeah, my economics class.
And what school do you go to?
I go to Parkview High School.
Parkview High School?
Yeah.
This is good. This is props for Parkview High School.
In the next 10 years, it's going to be huge. It's going to blow up everywhere, you know?
Do you think you'll be able to spend Bitcoin at Starbucks one day?
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
Yeah. It's the future.
Then you come up with a number of about $2 to $5 million per Bitcoin.
We just wrote a piece that we believe that Bitcoin is going to go to 10 million.
$10 million per Bitcoin price in today's terms, without even counting the sort of the inevitable hyperinflation of fiat currencies. And so this is my reasoning.
So you think that a single Bitcoin will be worth $10 million
in today's money?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do.
Going to the next stage, which will be the solution to the world debt problem. Then we will go to $10 million.
A single Bitcoin will be worth $10 million in today's terms. For one Bitcoin, that will be a $160 trillion market cap or network value, a 2,000x increase between now and our death.
So we think that you may end up seeing Bitcoin by the end of the cycle as high as $10 million per Bitcoin. $10 million per Bitcoin. $10 million per Bitcoin.
The beautiful and amazing thing about Bitcoin is that not only is this technology going to be transformational to the world, it's going to liberate people from governments and banks who's had control over the money supply and the ability to fund wars through the printing of money and diluting the purchasing power of everyone else through inflation. But Bitcoin is also going to really reward those who have an early fundamental understanding of its peaceful revolution. We no longer need to rely on governments or banks to control the supply of money, and instead put the faith into mathematics, cryptography, and computers. In a funny way, if you really think about it, Bitcoin's combination of being deflationary, only 21 million Bitcoins ever will be made, decentralized, digital, uncensorable, unseizable, transparent, peer-to-peer, is really a first of its kind ever in human history, making it really a get-rich scheme and a revolution built into one. I hope you guys are just as excited about this new digital revolution as I am. If so, please hit the like, subscribe button. Also be sure to share and retweet this video to your friends and family to ensure that the newcomers into the space have the tools and knowledge to accelerate this inevitable future of Bitcoin and blockchain. The decentralized revolution has only just begun. We are all stakeholders in this ecosystem. I love you all, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Peace.
Bitcoin bouncing back following a pretty steep drop last week of more than 40%.
I've seen bull markets and bears over the years. Bitcoin, both a bull and a bear in the same day. The digital currency fell 2%.
Well, certainly if you've been in it, it has been a good investment. Bitcoin prices were at $1,000
at the start of this year. Now they're nearing
but
12.
Thursday's action was out of this world. I mean, the thing was on a one-way run.
Started trading futures last night on the CBOE. It has been a
Reporter Amanda Brandeis explains what Bitcoin is and asks the question, should you buy it?
My name is Sergey. In this film, we will show you things that will fully change your mind and opinion on cryptocurrency world, and more likely it will change your life. Shall we begin? Even yesterday, we didn't know about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and blockchain. But today, the world is changing, and it changes so fast that not every one of us have time to understand and accept these changes. More and more often we hear from news, internet, from acquaintances and other people that Bitcoin has grown several times. Cryptocurrency continue to grow, but most people still don't realize that financial system and the whole world itself are changing right now. And those ones who think they know everything might be sadly mistaken. Important thing is always to have correct information and understanding of things that are happening. Because tomorrow in the new world, you might not find a place for yourself. This film will open eyes not only to those who still don't know about Bitcoin, altcoin and blockchain, but as well to those who are already familiar to the world of cryptocurrency. Everything is not as simple as it looks. Bitcoin can free the world from unjust financial system and banks, but also can destroy it like no world war ever could. It was 2008. An anonymous group of people or one person who was hiding behind pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto published a document under name White Paper, which described the technology and working principle of Bitcoin. In the same year, domain bitcoin.org was registered, and first articles were published. In 2009, followers and Bitcoin evangelists had already appeared. People who believe in basic idea and technology of Bitcoin on blockchain. Bitcoin at that time was absolutely safe and anonymous value of the future that could be used without intermediaries like banks and also not be controlled by supervisory authority and other individuals. But main feature of Bitcoin, it doesn't belong to anyone. People thought this way and still think now. But in this film you will learn things that most people have no idea about. Into what Bitcoin can turn our ordinary world might not be so bright and wonderful. Bitcoin is capable of turning the world upside down like no world war ever could. In 2009, Bitcoin's exchange rate was somewhere between 700 and 1,600 Bitcoins per $1. By the end of 2017, only one Bitcoin's cost was $20,000. Exchange rate increased by 32,000 times. It's a fantastic growth, and it keeps on growing. Every new psychological mark gets reached faster and faster, and soon we will see as one Bitcoin's cost will be $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, and maybe even $1 million for one Bitcoin. Why Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies keep on growing? Answer is simple. In the root of most cryptocurrencies is blockchain. It's a chain of blocks. Each block keeps information about addresses, transactions, and the structure itself is fully decentralized. Decentralization is the key word. Decentralization is when servers that secure one network of the certain cryptocurrency don't belong to one circle of persons. There are hundreds of thousands of computers, and each one contains full base of Bitcoin's blockchain. Full transactions history, account balances, and other things. All transactions in such network can be traced to the very first one, and that's how we get openness of all users' data. To change or hack any data in Bitcoin's network, you must hack and change information on hundreds of thousands of servers, which one's owners are regular users or miners. Mining is the method for extracting bitcoins, when you provide computational power of your computer to ensure the efficiency of network. For that, you get a reward in a way of bitcoins. But it's not as simple as it looks like. The more servers appear in the network, the less reward becomes. There is already an entire industry around Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. You used to be able to mine Bitcoin on any computer, when whole network was small and Bitcoin initially came out. But now for that purpose, there are some special computers, miners, that can do nothing but mining. Their huge computing power don't compare to usual computer. That's why mining opportunity on your personal computer has fully lost all meaning. Some cryptocurrencies are mined with video cards, which also made a leap in the development of this industry and even shortage of equipment. To date, a private mining without big investments in equipment is no longer profitable. Individual miners are replaced by mining pools, whole buildings with servers, which generate enormous computing power. And investments in such projects are equal to millions of dollars. And we can see how private independent mining and basis of honesty and reliability of Bitcoin network passes into hands of huge mining pools. And about its danger I will tell you a bit later. The majority of people make money on usual right choice of buying one or another cryptocurrency, which growth might be equal to 500, 1000% or even bigger for only 1 month. But it's not that cool. Some cryptocurrencies may fall, but in very rare cases now. And even plunged in value cryptocurrencies eventually will grow and re-establish its price level. A common world's interest in investments to cryptocurrencies helps in growth of everything that is connected to cryptocurrencies and blockchain. In past years, Bitcoin has been developing exclusively by a small group of people who believed in its perspectives and technologies. From 2015, Bitcoin began to come out into wider communities. And from 2017, there was a quantum leap of popularity and growth, not only of Bitcoin, but also of other cryptocurrencies called altcoins. Cryptocurrency had grown, there were more and more developers and specialists in blockchain technology, cryptography, and decentralization. Bitcoin had its disadvantages. Technology of Bitcoin even in 2014 already was obsolete technologies, which growth of popularity affected at inadequate offtake capacity of network. In December 2017, if you send Bitcoin to another address, transaction confirmation can be delayed for 24 hours or even more. New cryptocurrencies began to appear, like for example Ethereum, which was supported by crypto community in the way of fundraising for development and promotion through ICO. Also a new concept appeared not long ago. First buyers of Ethereum tokens also raised their investments by a dozen times with the increase of cost and capitalization of Ethereum. Blockchain and cryptocurrencies. As I mentioned earlier, because of Bitcoin, blockchain technology began its penetration in our regular life. It's important to understand that creation of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and others is by far not only application of blockchain. In 2015, Ethereum network was launched, and it brought more modern blockchain technologies and new concept called smart contracts. Ethereum was already more technologically advanced blockchain, in which not only transactions of token ETH are carried out, but also launching and processing of smart contracts and creation of custom tokens for any side projects. Smart contracts is also a new direction that came out with blockchain development. Imagine yourself a smart digital contract, which includes all terms of a transaction and no one can change them. For example, you created a smart contract for a house sale. Programmed needed terms using which contract will create required event. In our case, it's house selling. Buyer adds to smart contract's address needed amount in equivalent of cryptocurrency. Then every 24 hours, smart contract will check for updates in public registry of real estate. And right after they will appear data that your house is registered to buyer, smart contract will transfer money to your account. But if such data won't appear in register during 1 month, smart contract will return cryptocurrency to buyer. A simple example to show that there is a big future in blockchain. This technology will help to practically get rid of fraud and deception by both average citizens and authorities. Migration of public service, private companies and others on blockchain gives not only openness but also a protection and guarantee. Because info in blockchain practically can't be changed without a trace. For example, someone decided to appropriate your property, let's say a land plot, to do it using bribes and corruption schemes in real property register and lands of your government. That someone replaced you with a new owner, and your data was deleted at all. Like this land had never ever belonged to you. In this case, you practically have no chance to prove otherwise. While you will start judicial proceedings and so on, your land will already be resolved many times and eventually it will all be for nothing. But if this real property register and lands will be on blockchain, where data can't be deleted or changed without a trace, then this way of property appropriation will just be excluded. If any new data about new owner of this land will appear in blockchain, all previous data will stay. Tens or even hundreds of such examples can be quoted. Blockchain is needed in most of everyday processes, from taxi service and to public companies and banks. Since blockchain's inception, it begins to enter a new stage only now, and more companies start thinking of the implementation of blockchain into their processes. Blockchain and cryptocurrencies to date are similar to the internet back in 1993. The most interesting is yet to come. An important thing now is to start figuring it all out and if it's possible to take part in it. But each medal has two sides. And now we will look in detail at theories of two largest cryptocurrencies on capitalization. Bitcoin $290 billion and Ripple with capitalization at $120 billion according to January 6, 2018. Total capitalization of all cryptocurrencies for today are equal to $800 billion, and only a month ago it was on level $450 billion, and that's only a drop in the ocean. According to analysts, total capitalization by 2022 will increase by $20 or $30 trillion, including all new blockchain companies. It's a huge and fast-growing market. If internet needed 25 years to reach current level, blockchain industry and cryptocurrencies need only 5-8 years for that. Blockchain can't stop or halt its development. World community won't let it happen. And we regular people should do everything to defend this technology. In the right hands, it will bring total benefit. Benefit that will make the world a fairer place, and all interactions between people, governments, companies, both exterior and interior, much more transparent, and any registered data or transaction will be reversible. But first, we must learn to differentiate cryptocurrencies and blockchain companies. Remember the most important thing: blockchain is full decentralization. No one can and no one must have the opportunity to make changes in data or transactions. Decentralization is achieved through the allocation of servers that keep and process information, and the farther these servers from each other and the less its owners are correlated to each other with personal or other relations, the better for decentralization. But sadly, when the implementation of technology goes so fast, and first branch like cryptocurrencies takes a lead, many new companies use it, and with total ignorance of all subtleties of technology, they mislead people without revealing all danger and risks. Now you know more about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and it will give you more understanding for the next part of the film. Now we will tell you why Bitcoin and Ripple are dangerous. Bitcoin, killer of mankind. We give that name for this film for a reason. Bitcoin is amazing, technology on which it was created even more wonderful. And all that is happening now we entirely due to Bitcoin. But we must understand that Bitcoin is yet not just a technology. Bitcoin accumulates huge amount of money to itself. It practically became a digital gold, as many people now call it. In past, people were buying gold, and gold itself provided one or another currency of different countries. But not anymore. Now there are no countries that still reinforce its currency with international services, which made the emission of main world's currency, American dollar, infinite. Printing presses of Federal Reserve continue to print new dollars without stopping, because it's enough to give American banks another digital credit. There will be new amounts on bank's account, which it will put on credit of some companies or people. That's how runaway inflations happen. You can't start saving dollars because they depreciate. You must take credit and buy something, because you won't be able to save up money. And that's the principle of world's printing press. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies begin to fight it. In Bitcoin, they can be mined in total 21 million coins by the year 2140. And now there already mined 16 million coins. And if to date one Bitcoin costs $70,000, it doesn't mean that you can buy Bitcoins equal to one. This moment was thought out initially. One Bitcoin is split into multiple units, called Satoshi. The smallest amount of one Bitcoin is 1 millionth of Satoshi. That means you can buy a pot of Bitcoin even for $100. Complexity of extraction increases. Mining pools are growing, which is very bad for ecology and useless waste of electricity. Bitcoin doesn't need such huge computational power for transaction processing. The vast majority of power is spent on the solving of mathematical problems, for which miners get their rewards. Complexity of the problems grows as number of miners. That partly increases Bitcoin's price. Eventually, we have a currency which is controlled by no one, which is growing in price. At the time of January 6, 2018, it cost $70,000 per one coin. And according to analytics, by 2022, the price of one Bitcoin will be not less than $200,000. And it all started when Bitcoin's cost was less than 1 cent. Right after Bitcoin passes psychologically important mark, its price increases instantly, like it was when it passed $1,000, $10,000, etc. No one can stop transactions in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. No one can affect the data integrity on your account, block it, or do anything else. This is how it is widely assumed, that everything is fine. But there are some big concerns, and we will logically run through main moments. First danger. As we can recall, Bitcoin's creator, one man or group of people under name Satoshi Nakamoto, had launched Bitcoin network for the first time. For testing and check, they were mined about 7% of all Bitcoins to date. It's just an enormous amount. Even to date, it is more than $20 billion. According to analytics, in just 2 years, it will be $200,000 million. And by 2050, these 7% will be approximately about $5–10 trillion. If at that moment money won't be calculated conversely, that dollar's price will be estimated in Bitcoins, and that might happen, though it may sound funny today. In 2010, a guy who bought pizza for 10,000 Bitcoins, he would laugh too if he would hear that in 2019 his pizza would be equal to $150 million. But anyway, that is what happened. Ask your familiar trader or economist, what will happen if you put 7% of all Bitcoins on cryptocurrency exchange at one day? We will witness how fast will collapse not only the value of Bitcoin, but all other cryptocurrencies as well. Value may fall by hundreds of times. It will cause a catastrophe in the world so huge that most financial organizations, retailers and others will have to stop all trade and other operations. Basically, all world economy will be stopped during 1–2 days. Markets, pharmacies, no one will be able to accept payment because even yesterday everyone bought their products for the price at 100 times bigger. Everyone will wait for clarification that will not come soon. It will be such a crisis, way of looting and chaos, which world never seen before. People will have no choice but to smash markets and pharmacies to get needed products. This situation will be a good benefit for poor people. They will smash and rob not only markets and pharmacies, but everything standing on their way. Curfew and everything that we saw in movies about apocalyptic future might happen in real life. Just think of it. And what are the odds that this scenario will happen? Very big. Imagine that you have a room in your house filled from floor to ceiling with $100 bills. And if you open the door, you will be blown away by the flow of money. And you live in this house for 9 years already. And all these 9 years you walk straight past this room without taking even $1 from it. Do you think a regular person can handle it? Hardly anyone can. And that's how Satoshi Nakamoto would look like if it was one person. But we understand that it's impossible. Any of us would use such amount of money. But since 2009, there had been no transactions from Satoshi Nakamoto's account. Not even one Bitcoin was spent, except small part that was spent for system testing at the start. It's impossible for a regular person. Then who would do that? Maybe some group of people, maybe one person, but whoever this is, they are not motivated for money and wealth. This person or group of people are united by some incredible goal, for which they are ready to give up billions of dollars and wait more than 10 years. It all reminds a scenario of Hollywood movie, a thriller where a group of programmers create a new digital financial system and then wait for a moment and ruin the whole world's economy. Start a way of looting and chaos in which the whole world turns upside down and regenerates into something new. But into what? We can't even imagine. But goals of this group of people raise serious concerns. And we must understand it and try to prevent this scenario to happen. How to do it? It's simple. A steep rise of Bitcoin and its capitalization shouldn't be allowed until it's clear who exactly is this Satoshi Nakamoto. If it's a regular person, he should send the vast majority of his Bitcoins to a wallet, from which making further transactions will be impossible. Basically, he must destroy biggest part of his Bitcoins. Then danger of such scenario will disappear. But it seems unlikely that Satoshi Nakamoto will show up and do it. There must be a reason why this man or group of people wait for something for 9 years and don't touch their Bitcoins. Second danger. We all believed and dreamed that Bitcoin will destroy existing financial system, in which 50% of all the wealth of the world is in hands of 1% of population. But now we see that 40% of all Bitcoins belong to only 1,000 people. Then what's the difference between new digital gold and current financial system? It seems there is no difference. It's the same inequitable distribution, even more unfair than current one. Third danger is related to mining. There is an algorithm in Bitcoin's blockchain network which allows to make changes in transactions, changes history, account balances and other things. How it is possible? It's possible if someone has a control over 51% of Bitcoin network servers. You would say it's impossible. It's one of the main advantages of blockchain and Bitcoin. But it's not like that. When Bitcoin was only created, it was vital to build new servers from volunteers who should be rewarded with something for power exploitation of their computers. That's how mining was created. It was initially laid in Bitcoin's algorithm and thought out until year 2140, where every certain period of time mining complexity will increase. And the more servers they are, the less are chances for receiving reward for solving problems. At the beginning, Bitcoin's network consisted of enthusiasts, which were offering their computers practically free when Bitcoin's cost was less than 1 cent. Then with Bitcoin's growth, professional miners appeared. Then mining pools appeared, where large miners have combined. Then there were manufacturers of equipment for mining, which created systems with capability of solving problems of Bitcoin network much faster than any other powerful computer. Thereby, an opportunity to support Bitcoin network and mine from usual computer almost entirely disappeared. Mining is very power-hungry process. To accommodate big mines, there must be very cheap and affordable equipment, as well as good climatic region. Equipment for mining produces immense amount of heat which must be absorbed. In what country do you think are focused main powers of miners? It's China, and in the percentage it looks like this. As we can see, China is the absolute leader. And if all powers of Bitcoin are located in one country, which make the distance between owners very close, it causes big concerns. If 51% of these owners will unite, they will be able to make any changes in Bitcoin network. Mining pools already have brands and names. They know about each other's existence for a long time and probably even communicate with each other. Look at this illustration. As you can see, main computing powers of Bitcoin network belong to only 4 mining pools, which is 51%. If these 4 pools will unite or enter into collusion, they will be able to do with Bitcoin whatever they want. When the idea of Bitcoin network was initially created, more likely such scenario was not taken into account. By design, it should have been distributed across the whole world between independent small miners, but it all went different way. Mining is an enormous business which crossed the line of billions of dollars long ago. In current new cryptocurrencies, this mining system is not required. There are already developed and exist more safe and cheaper blockchain projects, where miners' role is not so important, and there is no need for such high electricity consumption. And Bitcoin's network already consumes electricity equal to a city with a population of 1 million people. Another aspect is rapid aging of mining equipment. It is the endless race. Those miners you bought yesterday, tomorrow will be irrelevant with the emergence of new ones. We looked at main dangers which Bitcoin can cause, but what to do to avoid them? Everything is simple and difficult at the same time. Cryptocurrency community shouldn't raise Bitcoin's price higher than it is now. We think that $50,000–$70,000 is a reasonable limit for Bitcoin and safe enough for cryptocurrency market. Because if someone will try to bring down Bitcoin, all altcoins will fall with it. We should assess the situation and not to raise it to the heights that might be dangerous. There is more positive scenario as well, about which I will tell you later. Altcoins and ICO. You think that only Bitcoin can pose a danger. It's not like that. There are also altcoins which shouldn't reach certain height in their capitalization. Ripple is the self-titled digital coin and company which develops cross-border payments for global banks. And what confuses in this cryptocurrency? It's simple. Ripple is made by bankers for bankers, and the most surprising thing that it's not even a blockchain. Ripple is centralized system is the most interesting case. How this project could get in the crypto world at all? If the network is not decentralized, then all controls of all assets, functions and everything are fully in hands of owners and founders. Another more frightening factor is that from 60% of all released Ripple coins, only 40% are traded on crypto exchanges, and most part of it is kept by owners. Have you often heard about cryptocurrency bubble? Ripple is one of it. Something like usual fiat money, like dollars that can be printed without ending and without control. And all of it is managed by one group of people. Second frightening factor is that newcomers in the world of cryptocurrency still haven't yet learned to differentiate real cryptocurrencies from something like Ripple, and overreacts when hearing any new information that push Ripple's capitalization high through the roof. At the time of creating of this film, Ripple is at second position on capitalization in the cryptocurrency rating, conceding only to Bitcoin. 120 billion against $240 billion is a very worrying trend, and we hope that common sense will prevail and such projects will never be that high, because such bubble might be created on purpose, then in time when banks will need it to bring down whole cryptocurrency world. We all heard about huge profits in cryptocurrency investments, but newcomers see that investments in top cryptocurrencies that already reached maximum heights don't grow as much as investors desire, and blockchain technology needs development. There are a big number of useful projects that launch the development of blockchain technologies for implementation in real world. Whole cryptocurrency community is looking forward when blockchain will start to implement in our real life. And that trend is also provided by ICO. It's a new meaning that appeared not that long ago. One of the first largest ICO was Ethereum, about which we mentioned earlier. ICO stands for Initial Coin Offering. Groups of developers and companies need funds for creating and making their ideas a reality, usually related to development of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. It's the first stage when coins of a new prospective project can be purchased for lowest prices. Then project collects needed sum with the help of private investors and investment funds, begins the development of the project, and coins released on ICO start to appear on cryptocurrency exchanges. Then, depending on the project, coins price grows. The most stunning growth after ICO were coins of the project Stratis. that increased by fantastic 151,000% in just 1 year. If you would invest $1,000 in Stratis coins during ICO, then in 1 year your investment at $1,000 will bring you staggering $1.5 million. But it's important to be vigilant here. Such examples of crazy successes are popular among fraudsters, projects created with the purpose of fundraising, or those ideas that are impossible to realize. Scams. It's good that cryptocurrency community consists of big part of professionals, and those projects are identified even before fundraising. Remember that not all coins grow after ICO. Usually growth happens to worthwhile projects. That's why figure out first in what you want to invest. If you are besotted with staggering stories of success in cryptocurrency investments, remember that on every case of success, there always might be a case of failure. In 2018, there are more and more projects that connects regular life and blockchain technologies. For example, ICO project ARMPack that will be launched this year. ARMPack offers to rid our world from forgeries of any products using blockchain, and also gives useful mobile app using which you will be able to pay for your products using cryptocurrency, store different cryptocurrencies, check products for originality, get discounts and participate in promotions of your favorite brands. ARMPack will develop logistics services based on blockchain for companies, better marketing opportunities for communication with their customers, and also use of blockchain ARMPack network by any other companies, which will accelerate the implementation of the technology to all business processes. Imagine that using mobile app called ARM Wallet, you will have an opportunity to check any product for originality, to see the information like expiration date, supply chain, manufacturer contacts, number of inspection of this product, give a feedback and get in touch with manufacturer, which will reward you with cryptocurrency for purchase. And all processes are merged and integrated with one blockchain ecosystem that is controlled with smart contracts, which gives 100% protection from fraud and deception. Unfortunately, there are only few similar projects, but we see that market gets adjusted, and the use of blockchain is the future. How to save and develop further cryptocurrencies and blockchain. No cryptocurrency should have big domination. List of top 50 cryptocurrencies must be consistent according to capitalization. There should be no individual cryptocurrencies which capitalization accounts for 10, 20, 30 or more % from total capitalization of all cryptocurrencies. If this continues, we will get the same dollar and absolute inequality, while only one of it will dominate whole world. It doesn't have to be this way, and all members of crypto community must understand it. Market will be safe and in constant growth, while there is no strong and dangerous dominant. I hope our film helped you to understand that it's time to differentiate bullshit and cryptocurrencies from worthwhile projects. Don't let banks to penetrate in this world as well. Cryptocurrencies in blockchain's greatest enemy is our existing financial system that keeps on falling apart for years. And I hope that together we will be able to build a brand new, more honest and just world, where people won't be dependent on banks, governments, and other mediators.
I think that the internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government. The one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, is a reliable e-cash, a method whereby on the internet you can transfer funds from A to B without A knowing B or B knowing A.
What is a Bitcoin?
What is Bitcoin? What backs a Bitcoin?
You put some of your money, real money, online, and it turns into Bitcoin. I don't even know why we call them coins, except that they call it coins in the name.
I think Bitcoin has turned into a massive multiplayer online game where speculators are trying to out-speculate each other.
Is it a means of exchange or an asset class?
I see you taking my real dollars and then you give me virtual money in return.
Thanksgiving dinner, my grandmother asked me, what the heck is this Bitcoin stuff anyway, right? And I said to her, do you remember when Visa cards first came out? You were used to paying with cash or with a check, and then a Visa came out. It was this weird payment system that you didn't understand. And she said, yeah, I remember that. I said, well, Bitcoin is just the next evolution of another payment system.
Bitcoin. By now, you've probably heard of it. The wild fluctuations in its price has gained the attention of the mainstream financial media. But Bitcoin is much more than just your average investment. Beneath all the hype and hysteria lies what could be the most important technology of our lifetimes. So what exactly is it? To fully appreciate the characteristics that make Bitcoin a potentially world-changing technology, we first need to understand what money is.
Currency started developing 6,000 to 9,000 years ago, some sort of medium of exchange, and people used something of value. Societies around the world, though, started to select gold and silver as their primary currency about 3,000 years ago, and then about 680 BC, they became money when they were minted into coins of equal weights. Governments started creating representative currencies where you deposit your gold and silver, or they have gold and silver in the treasury and they come out with notes that are basically a claim check on the gold. So they're supposed to be as good as gold because you can always convert them into gold.
Throughout history, precious metals were chosen as money, not through government decree, but because of their unique features. Gold is rare, easily recognizable, portable, durable, and divisible. Above all, because gold is difficult to find and labor-intensive to mine, refine, and mint, it has always been perceived as a store of value.
At Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, delegates from 44 allied and associate countries arrived for the opening of the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference.
In modern history, as World War II was coming to an end, in 1944, the Allied nations met at the small town of Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Here, they drafted a new financial system, which would stabilize the world's financial system once the war ended. With the United States poised to enter a golden age of prosperity, the U.S. dollar was chosen to be the world's reserve currency.
The Bretton Woods system was created after the Second World War at the Bretton Woods Conference in New Hampshire. And rather than using gold as the means of exchange between countries, as was the case under the old gold standard, the dollar was going to be used. The dollar was chosen because back then it was as good as gold.
Under this new system, the countries of the world would tie their currencies at a fixed rate to the U.S. dollar. And because most of the world's gold was held in U.S. vaults, the U.S. dollar would be backed by gold at a fixed price of $35 per ounce. This created a system where the currencies of the world were effectively backed by gold through the U.S. dollar.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
The Bretton Woods system lasted for about 25 years, but in August of 1971, President Richard Nixon called for an emergency press conference where he announced foreign countries would no longer be able to convert their U.S. dollar holdings into gold. This surprise move would come to be known as the Nixon shock. With this one announcement, President Nixon effectively created our current monetary system, a system where no currency is backed by gold or anything of value. This is what is known as a fiat currency.
Fiat currency is currency that's backed by nothing except government promises. The word fiat is a Latin word, and it basically means currency that's circulating by force. If people have confidence in that currency, and if there's enough government force, that will enable the currency to circulate for a period of time until people lose confidence in the currency.
Money is a medium of exchange, and the way it has evolved is that it's always something of intrinsic value until the modern age. When the politicians say, well, we don't need anything of intrinsic value anymore, all we need is political decree. We can say this is money, this piece of paper is money. Now money has a new characteristic. But underneath it all, there's this same concept in place that nobody ever seems to challenge, and that is that governments have a right to declare something of no value to be money, and you must accept it. That's really the problem, and it's still the problem today.
Without anything tangible backing the currencies we use today, governments around the world have been able to issue unlimited amounts of new currency without restraint. And with the advent of the digital age, currencies around the world are now digits in a global banking database. So what is Bitcoin? Well, simply put, it's a digital currency, much like the electronic currency we use today. But it's also the payment network which facilitates the transfer of this new digital currency from one person to another.
Bitcoin's a new internet protocol that enables the transmission of value over a communications channel. You can think of it like being able to send a gold coin as easily as you send an email. You can send any amount of money to anyone in the world, anytime, can't be seized, can't be confiscated, can't be frozen. Very useful technology.
So Bitcoin is a digital currency and it is a payment system. So it's a payment system in the same way that bank networks are, or PayPal. Those are all payment systems. But it's also a currency. So PayPal and banks use the dollar as their currency. The Bitcoin payment system uses Bitcoins as its currency. So they both have the same name.
What is your opinion of disruptive digital currencies such as Bitcoin?
If you're looking for the idea that a currency doesn't really have to be something physical, it can be something that's virtual, that's the system we already have. You know, and if you want it to be, I want a way to make payments electronically, that's, you know, credit cards. I mean, so exactly what it is that this thing is supposed to be doing that we don't already mostly do.
Bitcoin is different from other fiat currencies in a couple ways, but not the way people think. So most people think it's different because it is a digital currency, but fiat currencies are also digital, right? So the dollar is a digital currency, the euro is a digital currency. They're all just ones and zeros in the banks of the world. So it's not that Bitcoin is digital that makes it unique. It's unique in that it cannot be created out of thin air. So dollars, euros, yen, these can all be created out of thin air by people who have permission to do so, which is generally a central bank. Bitcoin has no ability to create it out of thin air. So it is a scarce digital asset.
Unlike the banking system we currently use, where bureaucrats meet behind closed doors and determine and regulate the supply of new currency, mathematics and cryptography are used to regulate the creation of new bitcoins. The Bitcoin network is decentralized, meaning that instead of transactions and account balances being stored on a central computer or database, Bitcoin's ledger of accounts, more commonly known as the blockchain, is distributed across tens of thousands of computers around the world.
There's something called Napster. We all remember Napster. We could download music and movies from Napster, but after a while it got so big and popular, the government came in, shut it down because of copyright infringements. No more Napster, right? So then somebody created something called the BitTorrent network. What's this? This is a software people run on their computers that allows people to file share. So if you run this software, you can go to things like Pirate Bay or Views or BT Junkie, and you can download any music or any movies you want, and they can't stop it because it's not a centralized location. Well, Bitcoin is the currency that runs on the BitTorrent network.
Why was gold and silver considered money for the last 4,000 years is because it took work and effort to make that nice, beautiful coin. They had to dig it out of the ground and refine it in the crucibles and the furnaces and stamp it into a nice, beautiful coin. And that took work. So you didn't have to trust anybody that they were going to work for you. The work was already done. Well, Bitcoin, proof of work, is the same thing, right? You have to hash away and solve all these math problems. You have to have the chips and the electricity and yada, yada, yada to create a Bitcoin. It would cost today about $800 to make a Bitcoin.
I believe that Bitcoin has multiple levels of intrinsic value. The properties like being unconfiscatable, properties like this censorship-resistant value transfer that no one can stop you from sending. More importantly, what gives it intrinsic value is the productive capacity and the brain power of some of the brightest developers in the world that have chosen to work on this open source protocol. And this productive capacity of some of the brightest minds that are building it is what truly gives it value.
All Bitcoin transactions are cryptographically verified by thousands of computers on the Bitcoin network. These very powerful computers, known as miners, expend a massive amount of energy and processing power to verify the integrity of each and every transaction.
So the miners basically validate transactions. All these transactions are flying around, and they have not yet been formally vetted by the network. If the miner believes the transactions are valid, it will put them in the block, and the block then becomes part of the blockchain. And over time, that becomes the record of truth. And so what that means is that if you receive Bitcoin and a few blocks happen after you receive it, no one can ever take that money away from you because the blocks have been stuck into the blockchain, they can't be reversed, and you know that the money is truly yours.
The decentralized nature of the Bitcoin network eliminates a single point of failure and makes it impossible to be hacked or to be shut down. Bitcoin transactions are transmitted peer-to-peer without the need for a third party, meaning that the user is in complete control of their money.
It's impossible to be shut down. That's the beautiful thing about it. There is no Bitcoin place. You can't shoot Bitcoins.
It has no center of gravity, it has no headquarters, you can't shut it down.
The only way you could is to shut off the internet.
Your average person has absolutely no idea how their email works, but it works, and that's all that really matters. And Bitcoin's very similar to that. But as far as what I would do to tell people or describe to people who don't know about Bitcoin what it is, I would say it's a form of money that you can just use on your phone or your computer in today's digital age where everyone's on the internet, that is much faster to send than most of the banks, and it has, for at least since its inception in 2009, risen in value.
For new users, the inner workings of Bitcoin can be quite complex and daunting. But what's important is how this revolutionary technology changes how money is transferred globally.
Right now, every single payment that you make to another person goes through an intermediary. Either PayPal or bank or Visa or MasterCard. And more importantly, the governmental jurisdiction decides if you're allowed to make that payment. That payment could be stopped halfway through, and then you have to try and get your money back. With Bitcoin, no one can stop it. The moment you decide to send another person digital value, you can just send it. And there is nobody in your way. There is no one that has to give you permission to pay another person money, and all they need is an internet connection.
This has the potential to displace the need for banks as a trust institution. If you and I exchange currency or have commerce using Bitcoin and it goes on the ledger, on the blockchain, we don't need a bank to confirm that that is a valid transaction.
One of the differences between Bitcoin and the banking system is it doesn't require a third party to perform. When you make a deposit into a checking account or a savings account, you are actually loaning the bank your currency. They now have title to it, and they have a liability on their books to pay you back one day, but they get to do anything they want with it. And you have this intermediary, this third party, counterparty that has to perform for you to be able to get your currency back. Cryptocurrencies invert the power structure. It isn't a few people at the top controlling a whole bunch of people at the bottom. The power goes to the individual.
In the same way that the internet flattened access to information and allowed anyone in the world with an internet connection to learn basically anything they wanted to know and to communicate with anyone else on Earth, Bitcoin does that with money. So now anyone on the planet, no matter their age or the arbitrary geographic location in which they were born, or the arbitrary rules of the people that govern over them, that person can now engage economically with anyone else in the world directly. And that's profoundly powerful. You do not need a bank account to interact with Bitcoin. You do not need a bank account now to receive an honest payment from someone else in the world and know that the money is legitimate and good and can't be rescinded. So money now can't be censored. Any two people can send it between each other through Bitcoin.
cryptocurrency Bitcoin has once again defied naysayers by spiking above $18,000 at one point today.
Bitcoin hits a new high. We had this incredible run up in the fall going into the holidays, and then we've seen a pretty big pullback.
This is a 30% loss in the week and a 50% loss in the year.
The past year has seen the price of Bitcoin rise and fall in dramatic fashion, getting the attention of Wall Street and the investment community. Bitcoin is now seen by the public as a speculative asset class that can be traded, but the core fundamentals of this important technology cannot be overlooked. The use of Bitcoin is particularly vital in the developing world, where billions of people are without basic banking services.
People who see the price all the time, especially in advanced societies, they focus more on the price and they think that Bitcoin is an investment solely and that it goes up and down like a stock based on news and expectations. But the fact is, probably there's more people in these kind of third economies. They don't own a lot, but they own it, and they own it because they need it. Not because they expect to get rich or hope to get rich, because they need to protect themselves against both destroyed fiat currencies and against capital controls. So when people think of it as an investment, they have to realize that the reason that Bitcoin's so exciting is because it's a future money for the world, not because it's something that could become a great investment. It just so happens to be that both can be accomplished at the same time.
One of the great powers of whether it's Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrencies, if we can figure out how to scale the technology, we can solve a lot of problems in the financial system. We can transact with each other globally at very low cost and very efficiently. And there's tremendous market power in that. Has nothing to do with anyone in the financial system. People want to be able to communicate and transact with each other simply and quickly, and the hunger to do that is enormous.
Today, Bitcoin is seen as a financial asset, but as the technology develops, the blockchain that powers Bitcoin may be used to verify transactions other than the transfer of money. Each Bitcoin is divisible into 100 millionth of a Bitcoin, called a Satoshi. These tiny fractions of a Bitcoin can be programmed to represent assets other than money. In this way, the Bitcoin blockchain can be used to verify transactions of all kinds of items without the need for a central authority.
The Bitcoin blockchain is a tremendous technological innovation that enables distributed consensus. People are able to come to agreement on what the state of this ledger should be and what it is. And that enables people to have trust without trusting any other party or person or institution. So anywhere we need to have trust, where we need to be able to verify what is the true and correct state of something, that has an application to be put on the Bitcoin blockchain.
For 6,000 years of recorded history, we've always had this problem when we want to engage in consensual exchange. That is, if we're strangers, can I trust you? And what's happening with Bitcoin and the blockchain, the technology that powers Bitcoin, is it is now possible for us to have trustworthy exchange without those third parties. The trust is built in through the cryptography. That guarantees the exchange of value. Well, that means that there's this technology that is as disruptive as the internet was to publishing. But this is disruptive to these 100 different institutions that really are the glue that pull society together. You know, everything from as mundane as notary publics to the land titling, to coining money, to voting. All kinds of these things are going to be recreated in the blockchain in a way that we will finally be able to fully trust. But what that means is what we've seen technology do to lots of private industries is now going to start doing to government function.
The thing for me is understanding the implications of what this is. You can take 100 million bits of a Bitcoin. Each bit is called a Satoshi, right? And you can program that to be anything of value. It can represent titles to automobiles or real estate or diamonds or gold or votes in elections. Anything of value can now be digitized and tokenized, put up on the blockchain, and transacted, can be sent across the internet without having to go through a trusted third party.
I think the blockchain and Bitcoin is going to change the world. I think it's going to change everything in terms of protecting people's identities, allowing people to own property. Bitcoin's for the 2 billion people that don't have bank accounts, the 5 billion people that can't prove they exist. They don't have title to real estate and stuff. That's what Bitcoin's going to change the most for those people, is because, you know, they're going to jump from the third world to the first world. It's really going to revolutionize Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, where people can finally now own real estate. We can have a transparent election that can't be hacked. Imagine. That's going to change the world in and of itself.
Tempers are beginning to flare. These people have already been in queue for more than 3 hours now. Carrying currency notes, the government suddenly banned on Tuesday night.
Because anyone can start using Bitcoin by simply installing an app on their phone, Bitcoin can be used by the developing world to protect their wealth from unstable currencies and government control.
We're seeing it behave as a crisis currency in Venezuela, in Nigeria, in Zimbabwe. When these countries can't get a grasp on their own monetary policy, people flood to Bitcoin.
The fate of the unbanked and underbanked population no longer lies in the hands of corrupt governments, centrally planned economies, and central banks. There's a new option, a plan B.
Personally, I live in the United States, and a lot of people in the US get bank accounts very easily, have credit cards, debit cards, and all of that, and they don't find that there are too many frictions and pain points. But in a country like India, there are 233 million individuals who are unbanked, who don't have access to a traditional financial infrastructure, and so they're operating cash payment to cash payment. But Bitcoin has become a game changer. So individuals, in essence, can hold on to it, they can spend it, they can transfer it internationally. There are so many use cases.
Currently, Bitcoin transactions can sometimes carry a significant fee, making it unsuitable for use for small transactions. But Bitcoin is programmable money, meaning that new layers and technologies can be integrated into it. In the near future, one such development, called the Lightning Network, will help reduce the cost of Bitcoin transactions.
At the moment, Bitcoin is actually suffering from being too popular. One of the challenges that Bitcoin has is every transaction needs computational power to process. So at the moment, Bitcoin can settle about 4 to 7 transactions a second. And in the future, each of those 4 to 7 transactions a second can contain 1 million transactions within it. And that's what the second layer and Lightning is trying to do. It will just make it so much more efficient and so much cheaper for the average person.
The integration of the Lightning Network into the Bitcoin protocol will scale Bitcoin into a fast, cheap, and efficient payment system. Once implemented, this will have enormous implications for the developing world.
One of the stumbling blocks to doing international business is the payment system. And to be honest, if you're taking credit cards from some countries, those countries are so associated with fraud that your rates on all credit cards you take just become astronomical, and it becomes prohibitive.
Something like 33% of the credit card transactions coming out of Africa are fraudulent. So nobody wants to take business from Africa. It's just too risky. With Bitcoin, you know the funds are good. So as a merchant, yeah, pay with Bitcoin. I'll sell anything you want, that's legal to Africa. That has tremendous implications, to be able to get access to these types of products and services so seamlessly. And then they're able to start having property rights. And property rights is really what's going to help lift them up out of poverty.
Closer to home, in today's digital world, governments have started to phase out cash, replacing it with digital currency. In this environment where concerns over personal privacy are very real, Bitcoin provides monetary sovereignty outside the control of government policy.
When you have a situation where the government is trying to control, they don't want people to have the means of hiding anything from them. Not just from a tax standpoint, they want to know what everyone's doing in Big Brother fashion. So, the way that I look at Bitcoin is it's the ultimate monetary weapon that the people have never had in history.
Every government in the world wants to go cashless. One of the reasons is that in a cashless society, you are not able to exit the banking system. When people panic, they run to the ATM machines, they run to the bank and they withdraw money. The other thing is the governments are starting to run out of money, and governments don't build anything. They just use other people's money. So they are treating everyone as a tax evader. I believe the main reason why Bitcoin is so popular and important is not because of its finite supply and being gold. It's because of anti-money laundering laws preventing people from doing what they want with their money.
One of the main functions of government is to create currency. And Bitcoin is successful only because of its potential for circumvention, lack of oversight. So it seems to me it ought to be outlawed. It doesn't serve any socially useful function.
As to whether or not Bitcoin is illegal or should be seen to be illegal, cash has been used for a whole heck of a lot more illegal things than Bitcoin has through the years and still is today. Cash is untraceable. It's easily transportable. Nobody knows where that dollar has been and how it's been moved from hand to hand to hand. So it's just a matter of making that connection that a cryptocurrency is really not a new thing. It's just a different version in a digital form of something that's existed in our society and legal structures for millennia.
Bitcoin is shifting the paradigm and challenging the legacy financial system. Recently, Jamie Dimon, chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Chase, America's largest bank, was quoted calling Bitcoin a fraud.
Why is Bitcoin a fraud? Here's the reason. Governments, the first thing they do is form a currency. They like to control the currency. They control it through a central bank. They also like to know who has it, where it is, where it's going. Wait until someone gets hurt. Wait until it's used for illicit purposes, which it is somewhat used for illicit purposes. They close it down.
You got people like Jamie Dimon, a serious guy, calling it a fraud.
Calling it fraud? You mean like there was hundreds of billions of dollars of securities that Jamie Dimon sold the public a decade ago called mortgage-backed securities? He's calling Bitcoin a fraud? Is that going to go to zero like his securities that he sold the public?
You know, first with respect to asking a banker about whether they like Bitcoin or not, that's kind of like asking a king, do you like democracy? It's just so thoroughly frustrating and insulting when people who know very little about what we do watch an up-and-coming technology and have the audacity to call us all criminals. You know, we're not the criminals here. The whole damn reason this ecosystem exists is because they're the criminals. And you know, it doesn't really matter at this point what he thinks. The genie's out of the bottle. Somebody in this room or somebody at this conference or somebody around the world is going to solve the problem of decentralized lending and value-stable currencies and decentralized exchange. And within 5 to 10 years, banks will become less and less relevant, just like landline telephones are becoming less and less relevant. And we're going to wake up one day and we're going to be in charge of our own money. And Jamie Dimon, in retirement, can watch the world as it is, not the world as he would like it to be.
The Bitcoin blockchain is built on decentralized consensus outside the control of a central party. However, with the hype in the rise of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, both central banks and commercial banks have started to develop their own digital currencies under the guise of what they call blockchain technology.
My big fear is that what is going to happen is blockchain technology will be adopted by governments, and fiat national currencies will be run on blockchain technologies, and the whole monetary system globally will eventually become cashless. And at that point, if it's centralized and there's an entity that runs the blockchain, they can lock you out of it if they don't like what you're doing, and they can trace everything that you do. Every transaction, everywhere you go, will be recorded. And so, if we're not careful, this has the ability to enslave us or free us.
I think blockchain or any kind of open ledger distributive database will have a tremendous impact on our world. My fear is that, and this is used to centralize, digital technology gives a banker the ability to put a chip in you to tax you whenever they want. to interface with a money system with you physically and to perfect the collateral. So I love the innovation, and the question for all of us is, how can we innovate and make the financial system more efficient and do it in a way at the same time where we distribute the power lines in the political system?
The blockchain is a technology, which is a good technology. We actually use it. It will be used for a lot of different things. God bless the blockchain. Cryptocurrencies and digital currencies, I think are also fine. JP Morgan moves $6 trillion around the world every day. We don't do it in cash. It's done digitally. Yeah. If it can be done digitally with the blockchain, so be it. But it'll still be a dollar cryptocurrency.
A majority of the people are using the word blockchain, and they don't really care whether it has this decentralized mining. The government is going to just have a digital representation of the dollar. They can call it a blockchain, but there's not going to be mining. There's not going to be decentralization. It's going to be a centralized coin. Whether they call it a blockchain or not is irrelevant.
The whole purpose of a blockchain is to remove control from a central party. If you're a central bank and you make a blockchain for dollars, and then you have dollar coin, if you still have full control over the dollar coin, you can create how much of it you want, you can control where it goes. There was no point in having a blockchain at all. You might as well just have a centralized database like a banking system. To really use blockchains in any meaningful way, it means that there is no person in charge. And so a central bank, by definition, is the one who is supposed to be in charge of money. And thus they would never create a blockchain or a cryptocurrency that they couldn't control. So that's why they will likely be made redundant, because the market can choose what kind of money it uses. And it now has a choice between a digital currency that can be controlled by central parties and inflated without limit, or a digital currency that cannot be controlled by any central party and that has a fixed amount and can't be debased. Over time, that's going to be a very obvious choice.
Bitcoin and the blockchain behind it are incredibly powerful technologies. As the future unfolds, these technologies could be used to restructure the financial system into one of fairness and equality for all, a system outside the control of the banking elite.
We have millions of people now taking an interest in what is money, the question of what is money, what should it be? And they're learning, especially a lot of young people.
Precious metals were once money. Then came the era of paper money. Could we now be entering a golden age of decentralized digital money? Only time will tell.
Bitcoin is first and foremost about changing how the financial system of the planet operates. However, Bitcoin is also a financial asset itself, and it goes through these bubbles, and people have made many millions of dollars when they buy it low, and then it goes up in value. But that's not really what matters at all. What matters is that it's actually going to change the entire ecosystem of the planet, how all humans interact with each other, and that's a very exciting thing to be part of.
Police in Japan have arrested Mark Capellas, the CEO of a failed Bitcoin company. Mt. Gox was one of the world's largest Bitcoin exchanges until last year. It lost millions worth of Bitcoins, leaving angry investors without their money.
I had no idea who he was. Mark Capellis, some guy who has the first Bitcoin exchange, and he's sitting on top of, almost $1 billion worth of money. And where did it go?
Avant de faire parler de lui dans le monde entier, Mark Karpeles a grandi à Dijon. Sa mère nous raconte le parcours de ce génie de l'informatique.
Mon ambition, c'est de devenir maître du monde, mais je pense que je ne suis pas le seul.
This whole burgeoning ecosystem and technology was essentially entirely dependent on this, 20-something French guy sitting there in Tokyo, with his cat.
Là, il parle de l'homme qui est aujourd'hui le plus détesté d'Internet.
All of a sudden, this website just crashes and burns, seemingly out of nowhere.
Alors ça, c'est un bouton d'autodestruction.
There were up to 1 million accounts, so there's a hell of a lot of people out there who've got reason to be angry.
Donc, il faut activer les 3 éléments dans l'ordre.
So this is almost more like a Wild West robbery.
Et ben...
Just imagine. Imagine a bank you can trust. A bank that knows...
Imagine, above all, a world without banks or bankers. A world in which the governments no longer control their currencies or its value. This new world is a currency. Digital, free, universal, as easy to use as a credit card, but as discreet as cash. And its name is Bitcoin.
Are you ready to bypass the system?
In 2008, this was a period of financial crisis. The system almost failed again. But the central banks came to the rescue, printed trillions of dollars to bail out the banking systems and all the large mortgage holders. There were bailouts all over the world.
It created this whole new desire to have a financial system that existed outside the bounds of Wall Street, outside the bounds of central banks. There was this desire to kind of return money back to the people.
At the time, there was a small group of people that were working on the idea of a new digital money that would be entirely private, be not connected with the government, be global, and purely digital.
The immediate reaction to thinking about electronic cash is that it can't be possible, because if it's digital, you can make a copy of it. If I make a copy of it, then aren't there two of them now? Like, it just naturally wants to fit in your brain.
And it was 2008 when Satoshi Nakamoto, which is a pseudonym for somebody else, or maybe several people, we still don't know, but came up with this idea of a ledger. A ledger that would belong to everybody, that everybody could see. And there would be a protocol to enter and exit the ledger. And there would be a very carefully scripted algorithm that how many of this new unit called Bitcoin could be created.
When you start reading about the blockchain and distributed ledgers, it just clicks. Like, oh, wow, there really is this way to do this decentralized authentication of transactions where you really could have a digital cash system. And then it sort of turns on another part of your mind to this whole world of possibilities that weren't possible before. It was very apparent to me early on that it was going to be a big deal.
It's alive! It's alive! The very first product that I bought was a pair of pliers. I didn't need pliers, but that was the first thing, and I was in a hurry. So I clicked that, and they said, okay, now scan this code, this QR code. So I scanned it, and send us the money. So I sent it, and they said, your transaction is done. And really, I had a sense, like a breathless sense. They didn't know my name. They didn't have to know my identity. It wasn't based on a trust relationship. They didn't have to access my credit history. Nothing matters except that I owned something. So you have to understand, it was like a cash transaction, except the person I'm transacting with is not in front of me. The person is somewhere else, could be anywhere in the world. Nothing like that has ever been possible in the history of the world. And when I realized this, I thought, I can't believe this. I can't believe this just happened. So I got up, and I remember just dancing around my dining room table, just kind of like doing a little dance, going, that's the future. I just saw the future. And I realized at that moment, if this works, the relationship between the individual and the state and our whole public lives are going to change forever. When? I don't know, but it's going to happen.
Bitcoin was really fed by some of the same philosophical impulses as the internet, and also some of the same sort of technological concepts as the internet. You know, both are really, on a technological level, about taking power away from the center. At the core, the internet and Bitcoin are really about decentralizing power.
Un des slogans du mouvement cyberpunk d'il y a très longtemps, qui imagine un avenir assez sombre, c'est « Information wants to be free ». L'open source, Linux, Internet, et donc Bitcoin ensuite, sont les outils principaux qui peuvent nous permettre d'améliorer le monde et d'apporter un peu plus de véritable liberté aux gens.
If you study economics, you realize the more economic freedom people have, the higher their standard of living. If you or I print a bunch of money in our basement and go around town spending it, we would go to jail for counterfeiting because it's economically destructive and is stealing from everybody else. When governments do the exact same thing, when they print a bunch of money, it doesn't change what it is. It's stealing, and it's wrong for the exact same reason. And as a voluntarist and a libertarian, I have a huge, huge problem with that. So the invention of Bitcoin strips that power away from every single government in the entire planet to do that.
Je ne suis pas anarchiste, il ne s'agit pas de supprimer totalement l'État. L'État est quand même utile. Mais je pense que si le peuple reprend le contrôle de la monnaie, il est possible qu'on puisse remettre l'État à sa place.
Bitcoin could mean different things to different people. One of Bitcoin's strengths is that, you know, it had all these different elements to it, and somebody could be into it because of the political aspect, and somebody could be into it because of the, you know, technological advances that it made, and, you know, everybody could, you know, kind of have their own connection.
La seule fois où j'ai vraiment changé le monde, c'est en disant une seule phrase à Marc. Il faut absolument que tu jettes un œil à Bitcoin, je suis sûr que ça va trop te plaire. Au moment où j'en parle à Marc, Bitcoin, c'était totalement amateur. C'était vraiment un petit truc de geek, de gamin, c'était un jouet presque. Même si techniquement derrière il y avait quelque chose de génial, le monde qui se construisait autour, c'était presque un jouet, un jeu. C'était pas encore sérieux, c'était pas encore suffisamment sécurisé au niveau des sites web, etc.
Certainly in the first few years, the typical Bitcoiner was a guy who spent most of his life in front of his computer, you know, and not a whole lot of time with other humans. But these were people who kind of lived, you know, to one degree or another, sort of in their own world and could inhabit this abstraction, which was this new money. There was no reason to think it would work, and so you had to be a little weird to devote any time to this.
J'ai une culture de programmation, mais quand je suis rentré dans le code de Bitcoin, à lire le code, la logique, c'est quand même quelque chose de techniquement très complexe. Peut-être moi j'aurais été capable de tout comprendre, mais j'aurais passé 1 an ou 2. Marc, a priori, pendant 2 mois, il n'a pas beaucoup parlé sur le chat. Quand il est revenu, il avait tout compris. Donc il a vraiment dû découvrir quelque chose et voir qu'il y avait un avenir, voir que techniquement c'était fiable, sécurisé, utile.
You know, I got into economics because I realized the quality of money has a lot to do with the quality of our lives. You get the money wrong, you get everything wrong. With Bitcoin, we have a chance to get the money right. And it can liberate the world. At least 1/3 of humanity is unbanked today. This provides them financial power, access, a chance for a better life for everybody, equally, democratically, all over the world, regardless of race, sex, religion, or nationality. I mean, that's awesome. That's beautiful. That's utopia to me.
God damn it, that shit itches. Us libertarians, we don't like uniforms too much. Of course, when Mark bought Mt. Gox, he'd expect to end up 4 years later handcuffed in the back of a cop car. Did you, Mark? Huh? Whatever. Beginning in 2011, Mt. Gox became the first credible internet site to exchange dollars into bitcoins. The thing is, at the time, well, a bitcoin wasn't worth $1, so to be honest, nobody really gave a fuck. But just a few short months later, the media dragged Bitcoin out of the shadows, and Mt. Gox went from 3,000 to 60,000 clients in just a matter of weeks. And that was the beginning of the glory days. Pas vrai, Mark? Isn't that right? Mark!
Mt. Gox was the first place where you could turn your fiat currency into Bitcoin. It was the exchange. There wasn't really an alternative. Mt. Gox was the bank of Bitcoin, essentially.
They had like 98% of the world's market share. If you think of Bitcoin as being an island, at that time, Mt. Gox was the only bridge to the rest of the economic world.
The growth at Mt. Gox was very quick, as we saw, very large increase in users. The first few months after I joined, it started changing, and we were getting a lot more structure and actually overseeing a lot of the business side of the company.
As time went on and Bitcoins became more valuable, people would leave larger deposits for a longer amount of time in Mt. Gox. So someone might have $10,000 or $15,000 in their account at Mt. Gox and have it there for 2 or 3 months while they were waiting for a good time to trade for Bitcoins. So Mt. Gox became very popular very quickly, became very successful very quickly.
Mark was always a believer in Bitcoin, and he really thought that, this could do something, and he really wanted to make the company work. He was always in front of a computer late at night, early in the morning, and even he'll be in the office for a long time. It seemed like he was always busy and stressed out, but that he was always doing something and trying to actually make Bitcoin into something very useful in the future, because he really believed in it, and he did talk a lot about it. Mt. Gox is his I want to say his baby.
私はカルプレス・マルク・マリ・ロベルトと申します。1985年6月1日、フランスのシュノーブという町で、マウントゴックスでは代表取締役として勤めてたんですね。Quand j'ai repris Mongox, on était, je crois, à 2000 ou 3000 comptes clients. En fait, 2 ans après, on a atteint le million de clients. Donc, c'est une évolution qui est assez rapide. Et je pense pas qu'il aurait été possible à qui que ce soit d'imaginer que ça se serait passé comme ça. En fait, Mongox n'est pas vraiment une banque, vu que la fonction de Mongox n'est pas de stocker ou de contenir des comptes où les gens déposent leur argent pour les laisser. Quand quelqu'un dépose, par exemple, de l'argent sur Mongox, c'est dans le but d'acheter des bitcoins pour ensuite les retirer et les utiliser quelque part ou les garder chez lui. Après, je sais pas exactement comment les clients, eux, voyaient ça. Moi, forcément, au niveau de Mongox, le fait de voir autant de bitcoins stockés, déjà, ça m'empêchait de dormir la nuit. J'ai dû mettre en place tout un système de surveillance.
Mt. Gox, I think, was trusted as the place that people could manage their bitcoins, could manage their money. It was the website where everybody wanted to store their bitcoin. It was the most popular place. Once you become the central bank of Bitcoin, basically, you become a target.
Any Bitcoin company was a target for hackers. I mean, this was just digital money that was just sitting there. This was kind of the simplest bounty system in the world where, you got the password, you had the money. Certainly Mt. Gox was the biggest of them all, so it was the biggest target.
Si je me souviens bien, on était en moins $1 début 2011 et en juin, on était monté à $30. Du coup, des nouveaux besoins sont apparus d'un seul coup. Et en l'occurrence, la première solution qui est présentée, c'était de faire des cold wallets qui sont complètement séparés du système.
We started using something called a cold wallet, which means that the bitcoins in the wallet can only be accessed using physical means.
Donc pour ça, l'idée c'est d'abord d'acheter un ordinateur au hasard de la boutique, prendre son carton et s'assurer jusqu'à la fin que personne touche à l'intérieur du carton. Il faut aussi une imprimante, s'installer dans une pièce isolée, sortir aussi de l'ordinateur tout ce qui est matériel de communication. On passe à la génération des cold wallets. On met dans une enveloppe scellée, et après, il y a l'auditeur qui a servi à générer ce cold wallet, qu'il faut le détruire physiquement.
That prevented hackers from ever being able to access the cold wallet, because they would have had to have access to the physical piece of paper that had the secret written on it to be able to get into that wallet. So bitcoins would initially go into the hot wallet or the main wallet, be kept there for a little while, and it would be eventually sent to the cold wallet.
Bravo. Really, that was rich. What Fat Mark forgot to tell you was a lot of that money he made was off guys like himself, too stoned to go to their dealers.
Hey, talking about me? Why should I freeze my ass off in the streets? With a couple of clicks on Silk Road, I can have my shit delivered to my door.
Silk Road was this website that was sort of incredibly, you could order drugs as easily as you could order a book from Amazon. The only way that they would purchase drugs and other items on Silk Road was by using Bitcoin. That was the only currency that was accepted. You couldn't pay in dollars, you couldn't pay in euros, you couldn't pay using a Visa card, you had to pay in Bitcoin.
No credit card, no trace. He pays in Bitcoin. It's like he was a ghost.
No thanks.
Without Mt. Gox, I don't know, if Silk Road could have been what it was. This was the way that people turned their dollars into cocaine. This was the central mechanism that made that possible.
The Silk Road was probably the most successful startup company ever in the entire history of the world. It went from absolutely nothing to probably $1 billion+ in sales over the lifetime of the Silk Road. Wow, congratulations.
I don't think that Mark Karpeles tried to become the, bank, the online bank to drug lords or anything, but that was certainly what it became.
Est-ce que Mongox a profité de l'ascension de Silk Road?
Indirectement, oui. Pour peu que je sache, pas loin, entre un tiers et la moitié des transactions sur Mongox étaient liées à Silk Road.
All of that popularity and success went towards making Mark feel he was important. He was originally interested in a Lamborghini for himself. He also bought himself a large house and then a penthouse. And all of these things seem to say that he wanted to show everyone that he was making money and his status in the world was rising. As that sort of thing started happening more and more, many of us started becoming uncomfortable, and Mark replied that his grandmother owns a castle in Austria and said that if we can't trust him, then there's nothing more for him to talk with us about. There was no way to tell how much money the company was making, how large its expenses were, or where the money was going in the company, because Mark was the only one with access to the accounts, and he refused to share that information with anyone else. He always thought that Bitcoin, because it wasn't a real currency, none of the laws really applied to it.
My name is Tigran Gambarian. I'm a special agent with IRS Criminal Investigation. We've been around for almost 100 years, and we go back to the days of organized crime, Al Capone. Of course, I have to put that out there. That was a famous IRS case, We're always on the lookout for emerging currencies or methods of payment that could be used to facilitate crime. When the Bitcoin came out, at least in the early days, that was kind of, it's like, how do we even track this? I mean, it's just numbers floating around in the Bitcoin world, and to us, that was kind of, it was a hurdle.
Well, government was just starting to take notice of Bitcoin. And like with a lot of new technology, it's unclear how the law applies to it. And no one really cared that much until the Silk Road, because you had, people selling drugs and telling Chuck Schumer you can't do anything about it. All he can do is kind of cry about it on the Senate floor. So they started looking for ways to regulate it and how to make a statement.
Heroin, opium, cannabis, ecstasy, psychedelics, stimulants. They're all listed in the light of day. It's unbelievable. And it's all hidden because they don't use dollars. They use this surrogate currency.
I think it was in the spring of 2013 that the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network put out a one-page regulation, just like one page, and they faxed it to everybody. They said if you're going to be exchanging dollars for Bitcoin and back again, you have to have a license. Getting this money, these licenses, costs more than $100,000 because you have to give a license in every single state, and it's a terrible regulation.
There's lots of people in government that they get furious inside when they think people are doing stuff without my permission. People are engaged in free trade with each other without my permission. People are smoking or growing plants without my permission. They get angry and they want to steal money from other people in the form of taxes and then use that stolen money to lock those people that are growing plants without their permission and lock them in a cage, or people that have a white powder that makes them feel happy. They have to lock those people in a cage. This is madness. This is craziness.
Just because it's a new emerging technology doesn't change the fact that you're still dealing with money, and there's still potential for criminals to use your services. And the reason that there are these laws is to prevent that. So even if you have a new company, if you have this new idea, great, do it. But you're still bound by the same laws that are in place for these types of businesses, which are money service businesses, or financial institutions.
The major importance of the FinCEN ruling is that before that, you had a lot of people who still wouldn't agree that there was any value to Bitcoin, right? Like, it was just software. Software really can't be money, right? And then this, financial crimes ruling comes out, and it says, no, really, this is money. It was just a different world after that.
At that time, there's sort of a cottage industry of day traders, people who are trying to make money for themselves on the side by buying and selling Bitcoin. At one point, I did a story where I was talking with some people in a chat room who were doing this, and it really sort of surprised me, the kind of range of people that were doing it. There was a business student, there was also a biology doctoral student, there was a bunch of different kinds of people who, you know, decided it was worth their while to buy and sell Bitcoin.
That's when real Silicon Valley firms, Andreessen Horowitz, Union Square Ventures in New York, started to make their first investments in this space.
There was a lot of hype in the media amongst journalists, like trying to figure out what Bitcoin was. So, you know, I thought, you know, this is definitely exciting. This is definitely something I want to be part of. And since Mt. Gox was the largest player in the world, I thought, you know, what a great opportunity to get involved, you know, with that Bitcoin movement at the time.
For creatives, this is a dream come true. You have a company that's ostensibly flush with money, who has a huge customer base in a market that's just beginning to explode, has no brand, really. Everything needs to be updated. I mean, this is a dream come true.
It was just heaven. It was actually quite exciting to be a part of this. When I spoke to people in Japan and abroad that we were working on the Gox account and working with Bitcoin, everyone was just fascinated.
It was really amazing how much interest there was from outside, you know, from these major VCs and hedge fund guys and high net worth individuals in New York, China, all around the world, interested in doing business with us, not necessarily investing in the company, but buying a shit ton of Bitcoin.
It was, let's make something that's fucking amazing, that everyone is going to look at and say, well, this is the exchange that we're going to put our faith in.
The first thing that we did, we decided that any press communications that came in should go through me. We all agreed on that. I come in second day, like 9 a.m., first thing, walk in the door, and there is Mark sitting on that blue ball being interviewed by, I think it was Reuters. And I just walked in and said, what the fuck is going on? What's going on in here? What are you doing? And he said, oh, Mark is being interviewed by Reuters. We just discussed this, like, not even 24 hours ago. And of course that ended up backfiring spectacularly.
That was the first time I'd seen Mark, was the picture of him on the ball. And immediately I looked at the whole aesthetic of this larger gentleman sitting on this ball and thinking, this is not putting forth a message of trust in us.
We would try to explain to him, you know, Mark, don't bring your pizza into this meeting with this important customer, or Mark, stop playing with the robot now, you know, it's time to do some work, and he would just ignore you and keep playing with his toy.
There was no CTO, there was no COO, it was just Mark at the top, and then pretty much everyone else.
It was like the widest, shortest pyramid ever.
Pas forcément évident de gérer une société avec plein de personnes différentes qui ont chacun comment dire, leurs atouts, etc.
Et leur manière aussi de comprendre les autres et de communiquer.
Moi-même étant pas forcément très doué pour communiquer avec les gens, j'ai essayé de voir comment les gens communiquent entre eux, et c'est extrêmement compliqué.
Donc, pour être manager, c'est pas évident, quoi.
Non, c'est pas évident du tout. Gérer des humains, c'est beaucoup plus compliqué que de gérer des serveurs. Franchement.
My first, official full-time day at Mt. Gox was quite interesting as well. I remember arriving, and then it was sort of one of the executives just plonked a bunch of papers on my desk and said, okay, we're involved in like several sort of legal issues right now. Can you like read these documents and summarize them for us? And at the time I remember thinking, legal issues, number one, and number two, like, shouldn't this be given to the lawyer?
people crying, people not knowing what's going on, people backstabbing in there, people who would come and go, the guy with the big swirly scarf around, these stories about Neil throwing stuff at the walls and shouting matches and all of the stuff that was going on there.
Every day it's like, you walk in there and you're like, I can't believe, like this.
Oh, that's we banned that phrase. We just thought this is the cream on the top. That chaos, we just thought no one's going to keep their job here. I felt eventually we'll just be replaced. They'll grow so big they'll need a global agency to handle everything that they're doing. But this will be a great story.
Ah, ignorance is bliss. A bliss so complete it makes you forget your obligations. Obligations like, you know, compliance with U.S. government regulations. I need that chair, buddy. Excuse me. Just a few weeks after the new laws were passed in the States, the government seized $5 million from Mt. Gox's accounts. Now, in and of itself, not a big deal for a company this size. But little did they know, shit was about to get a whole lot worse.
Après la saisie, on a commencé donc tout de suite à rentrer en contact avec les procureurs aux États-Unis qui ont opéré la saisie pour essayer de discuter avec eux et de voir de quelles questions. Et les premières questions qu'ils ont eues, c'était au sujet de Silk Road.
Mt. Gox, and they weren't doing this from the start, they were supposed to take 2 forms of ID, bank account information, all these things to verify who the users are. It makes a good strategy for law enforcement. If you can get everyone roped into this one central database, then you just take that database and go after the criminals.
Alors, les négociations qu'on a eues donc avec le DHS et avec les procureurs américains étaient en particulier au sujet de fournir des informations donc, sur Silk Road et sur les comptes que le DHS pensait liés à Silk Road, en échange donc de nous rendre ces 5 millions de dollars. En ce qui concerne donc tout ce qui est collaboration avec la police, etc., je suis, disons, pas particulièrement libertarien ni rien du tout. De mon côté, j'ai jamais vraiment eu de problème. Enfin, c'est pas vraiment le cas. Disons plutôt que j'ai jamais vraiment eu d'opposition au système de police, etc. Donc, je ne vois pas de raison de ne pas coopérer.
Following the Department of Homeland Security investigation and the seizure of our accounts in the US, Japanese banking partners freaked out. I remember seeing the executives from the banks visiting our office more and more frequently, and then over time they imposed limits, in terms of the amount of transactions we could do with them per day, in terms of the currencies that we could actually be dealing with, and which eventually enabled us to survive as a business only on enabling like transfers in Japanese yen domestically. And when you consider that more than like 95% of our customers at the time weren't based in Japan and weren't transacting in Japanese yen, this is a major, major blow to how we could operate.
The only way to send people money was from the post office. That was it.
On planifiait nos virements, donc on commandait auprès de Museo la somme en liquide, et le jour venu, on récupérait le liquide. Donc on peut se retrouver avec entre 20 et 70 millions de yens en liquide. Ça fait entre 200 et 700 000 euros. Donc on prenait nos petits sacs, bien lourds, remplis de liquide, et on remontait la rue, direction opposée à Shibuya, jusqu'à la poste.
Mark, to his credit, busted his ass trying to send money to people. People did get withdrawals, just real slow.
We wanted to communicate and say the banks are screwing us, but we couldn't say that, right? Because then the bank could easily just shut down all of our accounts and we would be screwed. We wouldn't have any banking partner in Japan. Our hands were kind of tied in many situations where we wanted to communicate.
I was concerned when there started being fiat withdrawal delays at Mt. Gox, so I agreed to make a video for them, and I wrote the words myself. I read my own script, and I chose my words very, very carefully. And even to this day, everything I said in that video is true. I regret having made it for them. I'm Roger Veer, longtime Bitcoin advocate and investor. Today, I'm at the Mt. Gox World Headquarters in Tokyo, Japan. I had a nice chat with Mt. Gox CEO Mark Karpelis about their current situation. I saw that he had over $100 million in their bank account. That's a lot of money. And then he showed me a letter from the same bank that all that money was held in, and that letter from the same bank told them that they're allowed to send 10 international wires per day, and they're allowed to send about the equivalent of $1 million domestically per day. Obviously, that's not enough for a business of Mt. Gox's size to keep up with the demands of their customers. I'm sure that all the current withdrawal problems at Mt. Gox are being caused by the traditional banking system, not because of a lack of liquidity at Mt. Gox. For now, I hope everyone will continue working on Bitcoin projects that will help make the world a better place.
I discovered Bitcoin in 2013. In April 2013, the market for Bitcoin just went crazy. It went from $20 to $240 within a space of 2 weeks. And the price was jumping up and down by 50% or double every day. At that point, I realized, okay, trading is what I want to do. So I gave up my freelance work and I started trading full-time.
In March 2013, there were bank runs in Cyprus, and that's when the price of Bitcoin first spiked. It went to about $160, and I was really kicking myself. If I had just, made a simple investment at $10, right, I could have made a ton of money. And that's when I said, that's it. I'm going to find a good time to buy, and I'm not going to look back. And I wired Mt. Gox some money, and then I was in the game.
So there was a period of amazing excitement towards the second half of 2013. Bitcoin was going up it was hanging around 100, 140 for a while, then it stayed around 200 for a bit, and then it just started shooting up. Nobody was really sure why.
And then the Silk Road bust happened. That's when I got kind of nervous. And there was a lot of speculation in the forums by people about, well, is the price going to collapse? What's going to happen to the volume on the exchange? And I think some people started selling. This was, I believe, the end of October. And I just held. And sure enough, when November happened, when November 1st hit, the price started to go up. And that whole month of November, it didn't stop. And I had held the whole time, and I just kept holding. I put my money on Mt. Gox to do some trading. Quickly realized that I had no idea what the hell the market was doing, and I shouldn't be trading. I just held and watched it go up.
It was just rising like crazy, so went 120, 240, and it just kept going up and up and up, and suddenly it was at $1,000.
I'd be in front of my computer just kind of cheering on the price. It was great. I go to the gym to work out, and I couldn't stop looking at my phone, right, tracking what was happening. It was a wild ride. And so at the end of that month, November, I think the price was around $1,200 or something. I didn't really want to sell my Bitcoins yet, but I wanted to get them back off Mt. Gox after trading. I asked for the coins back, and it was a slow response.
It was actually my birthday. I remember it very clearly. I was in Paris in a hotel. I don't know why, but I was thinking I really should withdraw my Bitcoins from Mt. Gox. I went to my computer and started a withdrawal, and I checked an hour later, and they hadn't come out.
They told me I needed to verify my account, which they never asked for before when just dealing in Bitcoin. To receive a bank wire, they'd want it. And that's when things started to go downhill.
Customers were getting angrier and angrier. Sometimes, even myself, I would be given transferred calls, from people who would just shout and insult me on the phone. And that's when I started to look for, an exit or a way out, because I realized that things were going to get crazy. Yeah.
Up until early 2014, Mark had been able to say, I can't get dollars or yen through to you because of these limits that they're imposing on me. But once people couldn't take their Bitcoins out, that pointed to a much more fundamental problem, because if he had the Bitcoins, he could have sent them immediately.
And a couple of days later, I woke up and I already knew I had to go there. I think my mind had decided while I was asleep, you must go to Japan. There was a snowstorm that day in Tokyo. There was literally an igloo on the street of Mt. Gox. It was freezing. I went down there. The street was almost empty. I pulled out my sign, and I felt monumentally stupid. And then Capellas suddenly starts walking up the street. The journalists start scrambling to get their video cameras out, and then I try and stop Capellas to talk to him. He has clearly no interest in talking to me.
Okay, I came all the way from London, to try and get my bitcoins from you to find out what's happening.
No problem with Bitcoin. You can't do anything right now.
He started launching into standard response. Oh, sorry, that is not possible. There are technical problems. But I, of course, as a techie, I knew that that a technical problem wouldn't stop them giving bitcoins back.
So do you still have the bitcoin? Do you still have everyone's bitcoin?
He was pretty concerned about that question. Eventually, he pushed past, got into the building, and said, "Don't come inside."
That was worth it. I don't expect their company's going to last much longer. I think it's about to collapse. And I expect that no one's going to get their money back, but we'll see.
By that time, I just left Tokyo, actually, and had relocated back to Hong Kong. This was in early February 2014. And I remember a friend of mine who was aware of what was going on with Mt. Gox called me directly and said, remove like any mention of Mt. Gox from your LinkedIn profile. And then I asked him, like, okay, why? He said, like, just don't ask any questions. Just do it.
Mt. Gox unexpectedly shut down today.
One of the world's biggest Bitcoin exchanges has filed for bankruptcy.
Faillite retentissante du système d'échange de Bitcoins.
La plataforma de la moneda virtual Bitcoin Mt. Gox se declara en quiebra.
The scale of it was just so absurd.
Mt. Gox.
Mt. Gox, hundreds of millions of pounds, and prompting the sharp fall in the value of the currency.
I felt like I had been punched in the stomach, and I couldn't believe that.
Que es posible que haya sufrido el robo de todos los bitcoins que gestionaba a causa de un ataque informático.
What the fuck? Like, what do you mean that there's like no Bitcoin? What do you mean that we're missing this many Bitcoin?
How could you lose 800,000 Bitcoin?
T'as un coffre principal dans une banque. Généralement, quand tu l'ouvres, tu t'attends à trouver une montagne d'or, et puis là, t'as juste 3 grammes de sable dans un coin. C'est pas... Il y a un problème, quoi.
You can't lose all of them before you notice. That just seemed absolutely insane.
If he had said, like, oh, we lost a few $1 million, like, you lost a few $1 million? Are you kidding me? Now, tell someone that you just lost, like, $800 million. $1 billion. Like, at the peak, it was $1 billion, isn't well over it now, and see how they react. This is the problem with this whole thing in general, is that people really got fucked on this, right? Like, really badly. I think people lost their life savings. People lost loads and loads of money. And I don't want to be seen as making light of this in any way, but it's just so absurd.
I had just over 300 bitcoins in Mt. Gox, which before they crashed the price would have been worth about $300,000. Of course, after they crashed the price, it was worth less than half that. At the time that the bankruptcy announcement was made, I had been traveling around with some journalists, and we stopped around the Mt. Gox office, and they heard word from some of their fellow journalists that there was a big announcement about to be made.
At his press conference in Japan, I think he was wearing a dark suit, and I remember there being a lot of microphones. And the thing that I took away from it was him bowing a lot, and which I guess is customary in Japanese business culture. If you make a mistake, that you kind of make a big kind of public showing of saying you're sorry and apologizing.
Sur le moment, l'émotion ne me permettait pas de prononcer le moindre mot. J'ai été obligé de faire beaucoup d'efforts pour réussir à juste prononcer les quelques mots que j'ai préparés et répétés dans ma tête pendant 30 minutes.
システムに弱いところがあって、ビットコインがいなくなって、みんなにの結果でご迷惑をかけてしまって本当に申し訳ありませんと思います。
C'était un petit peu le point culminant de tous ces 3 ans de stress. C'est-à-dire qu'après 3 ans, le pire qui pouvait se passer s'est produit et je me retrouve face à je ne sais pas combien de caméras et de journalistes en train d'annoncer au monde entier que voilà, c'est fini, que j'ai pas été à la mesure de faire ce que j'étais en train de faire.
Et c'est quoi le pire là-dedans? C'est les caméras, c'est de devoir dire que t'as pas été à la mesure de... C'est quoi?
C'est de faire face, en fait, à ses propres... mes propres... Comment dire? Mes propres limitations.
Parce que t'avais pas voulu les voir avant ou...
Non, c'est... Comment dire? Je sais pas exactement comment... Mais...
If people really want to know what happened, like what's the real story behind it?
Well, we are working on it, but anyway, in the meantime, we are sorry for the troubles caused by this.
After the crash, the Bitcoin, let's say, ecosystem took a major hit in terms of respectability, public perception. Even like for me personally, I thought, okay, well, Bitcoin is dead. Like, there's no way that any governments or banks will tolerate something like this happening again.
There's no insurance in Bitcoin. There's no government backing for Bitcoin. And obviously, you know, early on, that was the whole allure of this thing, was there's no government meddling in this. But as soon as there were losses, people realized, oh, there's also no government to back this up. When I get my Bitcoin stolen, they're gone. That's it. That's the end.
During the first half of 2014, a lot of people started investigating this and seeing if there was anything that could be done. Well, there are probably 2 reasons for why it can be really hard to trace Bitcoin, despite it being inherently traceable. First, in the case of Mt. Gox, purely scale. Mt. Gox had an immense number of Bitcoin addresses. It's too large for a human to easily see because there's just so much information to take in. The other problem is that if you deposit a Bitcoin to a service like Mt. Gox, and if you withdraw that Bitcoin later, it's not necessarily the same Bitcoin. You might have gotten a different Bitcoin deposited by some other customer. As a result, when a Bitcoin is deposited to one of these places, you can't follow the trail of that particular Bitcoin. I think a lot of people at that point just suspected that someone in Mt. Gox had stolen it. Simply because there was no way to know one way or the other.
I think the best clue of what happened to those Bitcoins is that Mark was able to find 200,000 of them after it was reported that they were missing.
How many people in the history of this world could actually claim that they had accidentally misplaced $200 million? It doesn't chime.
What is wrong with this guy? You found it under your mattress? Like, what are you doing? You're a person who is supposed to be running a company. You're a person who's supposed to have experience in security. You're a person who's supposed to be very knowledgeable about Bitcoin. It was baffling to understand, like, how you could just lose that much money and then just find it again magically after the fact.
Is this PG-13 language I can only use here, or people were really pissed at him, and people hated him?
I always felt that he didn't really get the gravity of the situation.
It was just terrifying to read what was going on.
こんにちは。今日はうちの特製のアップルパイの作り方を説明します。
The question everyone wanted to know is, where are the Bitcoins? What happened to them? And at some point he went onto Twitter and he started tweeting about things like, oh, the sunrise in Tokyo was nice today. Everyone was still in limbo, waiting for him to say what had happened to this $500 million. And he's talking about the weather in Tokyo.
で、このまま1時間、2時間ぐらいそれでも待たないといけないんですけど、とっても。
I had been working at the law firm. This guy came to us who was a former Mt. Gox employee, Nils Arderstad. He had a lot of information about Mt. Gox, so he was very interesting to us because he could give us a lot of insight. And if Mark had done something criminal, he was going to, be a good source to help us learn about it and help us prove it. And so he had this story about Mark giving him a death threat. I went with him. I walked with him back to the Mt. Gox office. I kind of looked around with him. But I believed his story. I did. And he seemed credible. There was some woman from some Bitcoin company who died, right? She in Singapore. I think she fell off a building. And there was rumors online that maybe that was somehow connected. I went and had my apartment, my hotel room moved from like the 10th floor to the 2nd floor in case I had to get out easy. It was kind of